Okay, it's been a marathon. Marathon morning.
Hold on, we still gotta do the dance, guys.
Oh, yeah,
It's the last point too.
Ed has to do his thing.
And so we're letting our visitors come in into the public session. We're still live. And Assistant Attorney General Hamrick, go ahead.
Thank you. Surprisingly, it's good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Ed Hamrick, the Assistant Attorney General, and I represent the State Board of Land Commissioners. This morning, we were in an executive session to discuss a number of matters that were noticed for executive session and are authorized as attorney-client communication under 246402 3A, 2 and 3 of the Colorado Revised Statutes. Specifically, matters related to the application of Raintree Metropolitan District under case number 20 CW 3214 in Water Division 1, an ownership dispute concerning land in Weld County, and Board and Commissioners training related to 1198 and legal issues related to that. No decisions were reached or made in executive session. The board is back on the record and intends to take a brief break before returning to its public business. Thank you very much. Appreciate your indulgence.
Folks looking at, thanks for joining us online. We're in public session, but we've been going pretty hard for a while. So looking at the clock, we're going to gavel the meeting back into after a break at 12:15. So join us then. Thanks.
Fabulous. Everyone, I think we're gonna call the city to order. Right. So we are now going, I can't remember, let's call the public meeting again to order with the roll call of the commission.
You don't need to do.
Okay, great. So we're now on agenda. Welcome back to the July meeting of the Colorado State Board of Land Commissioners here in Fort Collins. We have a full complement of commissioners attending, one virtually. And the first thing on our agenda today is public comment for non-agenda items. Alex, turn it over to you.
You know what?
Awesome.
Alec,
ahead.
I'm a little messed up here. Hold on. You now have co-hosting duties, Alec.
Awesome. All right. It doesn't look like you have any in-person commenters. So if anybody would like to make a comment on a non-agenda item, please use the raise hand function on Zoom and we will move you over as a panelist and you will be able to address the board. Commissioner Frobe, I'm not seeing any hands raised.
All right, thank you, Alex, for your help. Then I'm delighted to turn it over to Director Rubarino for announcement.
Thanks, Jennifer. So I would like to add my echo to the chorus of congratulations for Commissioner Fribble joining the board, as well as Commissioner Harvey, welcome aboard, and also, and Dale, that our chair has been renewed for a second term. We're thrilled about it. Congratulations, Chair Frobe. And that inspired a conversation between staff and the AG, thanks Ed, to figure out the right process and timing for our officer elections. And so we are going to bring that to you in August. And so in the meantime, if you want to think about continued service, Chair Frobe is president and Commissioner Peterson is vice president. Think about whether you want to continue to serve. Those of you who are not currently officers, if you'd like to be considered for election, August meeting. And that is all right. Thank you very much.
Do you want to mention that today?
Yeah, sure.
You don't have to, I just wanted to.
So Ed was raising that right now it's a little unclear because the chair has a 1-year term and the vice chair, the president has a 1-year term, the vice president has a 2-year term. So we are going to try to normalize that a bit more and look at 2-year terms for each and consider term limits. And so that requires a refinement of the governance manual, which we will bring to you in August as well.
No, I just wasn't sure you wanted to bring that up. This month or next?
Thank you. Yeah, we'll tackle that in August and thank you for this material. All right, then it's my pleasure to introduce Director Gibbs as DNR for our, I'm sure, fulsome DNR report.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and it's great to be here in Fort Collins with you all. I'm so sorry I couldn't join the tour yesterday. I heard it was really busy and really a lot of stops, but really interesting. I was at a meeting looking at kind of like how the state and federal partners and localized partners can work on forest health and wildfire mitigation around the state, knowing there's a lot of uncertainty at the federal level. And so it was definitely a really important meeting. Otherwise, I would have loved to join you all. Just like Director Rosamarino mentioned, I too want to congratulate Jim Pribble and Mark Harvey on their recent appointments. Mark, I went through a few interview process online with you, and it was really great to hear your commitment to public service and your knowledge of agriculture and the management of the thousands of acres of lands that you deal with. And I know you're going to be a tremendous board member. So thank you for stepping up. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And, yeah, and Jim, you know, I was trying to think in my head, like we've known each other, I think, well over 20 plus years. But many of you know Jim. I don't know. You can't say no in many ways. So he served on numerous boards and commissions in the state of Colorado and other boards and commissions. But you know, Parks and Wildlife, as well as the former Parks Board, and then one of the finest higher education institutions in the world, Western Colorado University. Happen to be an alum, but Jim serves on the board for that. So thank you, Jim, for your continued service. I really appreciate it. And then, of course, Madam Chair, congratulations. Really enjoyed working with you, and I'm really glad that the governor reappointed you, and really wonderful to have great consistency too of your leadership, and especially you being chair right now. And so just a big congratulations. Yeah, so thank you. And then of course, Director Rose Marino, congratulations to you. I believe this is your first official meeting in this role, and I've worked with you for the last few years, and you know, I'm always impressed with you and your collaboration. And for the folks that may be listening brand new online, we met with 3 different entities of county commissioners and staff, and I know chatting with some of them out in the hall after, like they were excited to hear your thoughts, and I know you've already hit the ground running, so congratulations, and really excited to have you in this role. Let's see, a few other updates. Well, the Department of Natural Resources, first of all, you know, we handle land, water, wildlife, minerals, and oil and gas. So it's been very, very busy, to say the least. To give you a snapshot of my week next week, you know, I'll be in Denver on Monday for meetings. Tuesday and Wednesday, I go to Salida for Water Conservation Board meetings, which I'm actually a voting member of. Later on in the week, head to Grand Junction for Parks and Wildlife Commission meetings. So that's Thursday and Friday. So that gives you a snapshot of just like 1 week that I'm, you know, constantly on the road. But I truly love the job and love the mission, and we're doing good work in the Department of Natural Resources. I'm really grateful for my team that are here, for the EDO team. And I know you heard from Wendy earlier briefly, but you'll hear from Wendy a little bit later on, and with Tim Grass here, and Aaron Ray, thank you so much for all your leadership. But just thinking of, you know, later on the agenda, I think pretty soon you're going to hear from Wendy as she speaks about the DNR's boards and commissions and the handbook, as well as a partnership with Emma and the AG's office. You know, we do have a lot of different boards and commissions within the DNR, but there's multiple committees, there's multiple councils. And so having this guidebook really is important to share the DNR values that we have, to make sure that we're always keeping the public service and transparency, close communication, treating each other and Coloradans and our staff with respect with all this process, which I know you all do. Wendy will also give an overview on media contacts. I know also a lot of people have asked, like, what's the legislative process look like in terms of how we prioritize, as well as the budget process. So, so thank you, Wendy, for going over all of that. And then EDO staffing, I'm really excited. Have Aaron Ray writing back to me, but he stepped up in a big way to be DNR's policy director. So he previously was, many of you have worked with him in his previous role as assistant director for energy innovation, but really excited to have Aaron you in this role. And he's been a really key, really important leader in the Department of Natural Resources. He is filling the seat that Kelly Romero-Keeney had previously. Kelly's from Steamboat and actually had this great opportunity to be the assistant city manager for city of Steamboat Springs. So her commute is like 3 blocks now from the house instead of multiple miles down to Denver. So so congratulations, Aaron, but also I really wish Kelly well in her new role. I know, just following up to at the last meeting, I believe Kelly Romero-Heaney kind of gave some updates regarding House Bill 1332, which directs the DNR to convene a work group to study opportunities to advance conservation and recreation on state land boards. I know that some of you have had some questions on kind of, legislative matters and so forth. I really urge you all commissioners to definitely reach out to Nicole and Nick. If you have any questions during the legislative session, like they're going to be plugged in. We have weekly legislative meetings. But also we have a Director of Legislative Affairs, Daphne Gervais. She is my lead on, and the DNR's lead on, all the communications, setting up meetings with legislators and keeping folks informed on everything regarding the state capitol. So she's really important to say the least. And then I know State Land Board too, you work on some tribal matters as well. And we have Stacy Coleman, who's our Assistant Director on Tribal Affairs. So really connect with her if there are any questions on that. As far as the implementation for HB 1332 goes, the working group and study, the RFP was posted on June 30th to recruit a consultant, and so we will hear, sometime soon on that. The point for the DNR will be Aaron. So Aaron will be happy to answer any questions regarding that process, and then support by Tim Brass as well. So also coming up in your August meeting, the DNR, Great Outdoors Colorado, and CPW staff will be giving you all an update on Colorado's outdoor strategy and really kind of more towards the implementation of that. There's great opportunities that the State Land Board will be kind of involved with, especially with a growing biodiversity and recreation staff. And as we work towards moving the goals forward on the outdoor strategy. And the outdoor strategy, just so everyone knows, it's really this like three-dimensional tier. Just think of like a blueprint for water, which is our water plan in Colorado. But this is really our blueprint for conservation, climate adaptivity, recreation, and then third is kind of a funding mechanism. So how to make all that happen. So we've been working on that for quite a long time with key, again, it's been GOCO, DNR, CPW, and the governor's office have been leads on this. And then also in terms of like energy, as you all, of course, are land and mineral owner resources with oil and gas development, I want to make sure you're aware of recent ongoing regulatory and enforcement matters. So on June 26, our Energy and Carbon Management Commission issued a notice of alleged violation to Noble Energy, and is regarding the loss of a well control incident at the Bishop well that occurred in the Gailton, Colorado on April 6, 2023. So when the ECMC issues this notice of alleged violation, there's been reasonable cause to believe that a violation of this in any commission rule, order, or permit has occurred. It identifies potential violation of 6 ECMC rules, and they start beginning the enforcement process. And then yesterday, the commission received update from ECMC staff on the operator compliance with the requirements of HB 22-1348, which mandates disclosure of chemicals used in oil and gas operations. And then also another energy update, tomorrow, the Colorado Produced Water Consortium will hold a virtual meeting to continue to explore issues related to the development of produced water facilities in proximity to disproportionately impacted communities. For tribal updates, on April 2025, State Land Board staff provided notices and requests for comment to 11 tribal nations originally associated with the Bakken Land Exchange Cultural Resource Plan. That's proposed on the Lahara property transfer to representatives from Southern Ute Indian Tribe Cultural Preservation Department responded requesting additional information, and State Land Board staff has not received any further responses or comments from any of their additional nations or tribes at this time. And then a quick Parks and Wildlife. There's a lot going on at Parks and Wildlife, but we just recently, earlier this week, held a Parks and Wildlife special commission meeting to go over kind of the updates on the Copper Creek Pack, which is really close to Commissioner Harvey's property. How close? Maybe a mile or so, or maybe less if you're on mute. But I think that meeting went really well to kind of share with the commissioners kind of what the latest is with that particular pack and all the effort that Parks and Wildlife is working on to minimize conflict between wildlife and landowners. So with that, I know you've had kind of a busy morning and stuff. Happy to answer any questions if you do. But again, just really glad to be up here with you all. And I wish I could join the tour yesterday, but at a future meeting I will. Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. I do have one question. You referenced maybe an update and a presentation in our August meeting from GoCo and on after strategy.
I think that's in the works. It should be. Yeah.
So, and that's a public meeting that's going to be outside Alamos.
Yes.
Okay, just confirming. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, we've been working really hard on that. We really want to give you like all the details of kind of what this really means and how State Land Board is involved already, but how we can be more involved in the future. Yeah, Nick, you've been involved in a lot of that, so.
Thank you very much for coming in.
I just have a comment, in part regarding Mahara. Given, some of the federal government's interest in selling potentially federal lands, it's caused us some pause about selling any of our lands to the federal government in any way, shape, or form. Has that led to you to have any concerns or questions, or what has been your agency's stance on any of these
Yeah. well,
ideas?
First of all, like in terms of like the USDA, we do have a shared stewardship MOU in place right now that really spells out how we collaborate, how we partner on a broad range of topics. It could be stewardship, outdoor recreation, fire mitigation, diversity in the outdoors, you name it. We're working now on a shared stewardship MOU with the Bureau of Land Management to kind of replicate that too. There is a lot of uncertainty at the federal level that I know just a fraction of really kind of what's going on. I've heard, bits and pieces in terms of how different departments are being impacted in terms of the funding streams and so forth. In terms of fire, it seems like things are kind of the status quo. In terms of outdoor recreation, there's real challenges in terms of funding people, and even folks have been let go in many cases. And so, that particular property, I think we have to look at the long term, and I struggle thinking about like, I almost feel like it's like a slow moving tsunami almost like in front of my eyes where our federal partners are slowly saying, okay, if you care about these lands, you or local counties need to step up and help manage it. And so I'm not really sure. It's hard. So we're trying to navigate that right now, what it really means. And are they saying like, hey, should the state be ready to buy up, federal lands
Exactly.
potentially? Yeah. So that's kind of what we're navigating right now. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'll just speak personally, selling land to the federal government, which is now a question mark in terms of what they'll do with any land, is a concern.
Yeah. Yeah, take a close look at that. But I know that's something that's been in the works for a long time though too, with some great benefits.
The world's changed.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my philosophy in general when it comes to the lands that we manage, I kind of look at it through a lens of like firefighting, where wildfires don't know the difference between federal, state, and private lands, and we have a management strategy that reflects that. We need to respect all the different ownership boundaries. Don't get me wrong, but like figure out who can bring what to the table, that we can all have kind of a holistic stewardship of the lands that we have. Sometimes counties are really good at that. Sometimes the state is. Sometimes feds and different components.
I think as Christine said, so you may be hearing from us again.
Yeah.
Once we get out there on the land and have a chance to
Yeah.
really contemplate the impact of meaning this particular piece as it relates to our portfolio or as it relates to other ownership. you know,
Yeah.
Private or
Right.
public or.
It's a federal line there, yeah,
Yeah, so a kind of a hot topic.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, indeed.
Awesome. Well, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
And I think we would also like an update on how the committee formation is going for the legislative.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
That would be.
Yeah, for 1332, that one, yeah.
In August.
Oh, yeah, and we can either, make sure Nicole, Nick, and or my team, Aaron, we can, we can figure that out.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I guess for business council, what the other piece of business.
Okay, so, yes, so the staff report. And that is, I just wanted to highlight a few items. You can see the staff is working hard. We have 131 these actions to report for, the last, since last meeting. And that total is, $5,451,000 plus in that, for the land report. And there are several different lines of business involved in those actions, agriculture, oil and gas, rights of way, and solar. So lots going on at that level. And this is a reminder, those are these actions that we do business policies and business policies that rise to the level of board decisions. We have kicked off our annual business planning. We started that in late June, and we expect to be able to deliver to you the final year annual business goals at your August meeting, and that will be the final year implementing the current strategic plan. So the staff is really excited and digging into that. So they will get a report out in August. And then just a staffing update, it's very exciting to us. As I mentioned at the County Roundtable, we do have a new North Central District Manager coming in towards the end of this month, Casey Barber. So excited to have him on board. And then two field projects. One is the Wet Meadow Restoration Project. And there's a picture of a rock structure used to restore meadows. I just want to underscore, this is hot, sweaty, hard work. And so thank you to the State Land Board staff, to the volunteers involved, and also to Colorado Fish and Wildlife for making that possible. And then finally, before I turn over to Nick, tornado cleanup on Lowry. So there was the May 18th tornado touchdown around that area, and the staff was in board teamed up with lessees to do a cleanup. A lot of debris on Lowry, and special shout out to Lessee Trainer Cattle Company, led by Nick Trainer, as well as the Southeast Metro Stormwater Authority. Along with lessees and staff, they together all up 22 trucks and trailers full to keep our ranch looking nice. So,
I just wanted to say a quick word of thanks to the board and an affirmation about how well our governance process works between staff and board. Early in the calendar year, commissioners, you gave us authority to expand staff discretionary spending of some small I&D amounts to get work done. You would not believe the number of damaged fences, broken livestock wells, cleanups at Lowry, things that just came up that we were running out of money to quickly respond to, and the expanded authority actually worked out perfectly this year. We came close to spending every dollar, the $750,000 that you allow us to do with our staff discretion. So just a word of thanks on that, and continue to provide some detail on what's happening with those funds. And if we ever want to review it again, please raise a hand, but it's working really well.
And are those requests coming in just from the district manager who happens to be on a tour, or was there something sent out to various lessees of what they noticed? How did you know what needed
largely it's the regular inspection and observation work that the staff is doing and 3 ovens and 2 dishwashers. And I mean, so the lessees will let us know that something that they rely on us for because it's our asset is not going well. So that is again, more affirmation there of our relationship with our lessees. They're letting us know what they need and we're trying to respond to it very quickly. So no interruption in cattle operations usually is the biggest part.
Yeah.
So thanks.
Thank you. Will we finish the staff report? Yes. And turn it over to Emma and Wendy. For fourth meetings.
Do I have your family or do you just keep on going? Do I have there with me? Do you want me with you?
You always you need a lawyer.
In case there's a tricky question that I'm qualified to answer, which I'm not an attorney. So you're presenting to me, Nick?
And
Thank you.
Mary, give me a second to see why all of a sudden we can't see that screen here.
Well, thank you for Commissioner for the opportunity to present. My name is Wendy Padilla. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Department of Natural Resources, and I have Emma Schultz with the Attorney General's office for any legal questions. And just today, I wanted to go over our boards and commissions handbook that all of the Department of Natural Resources boards and commissions follow. I know we're a little bit past schedule, so I'll do my best to be very efficient with your time, but definitely stop me if there's questions that come up, and we'll go ahead and get started. So the topics today, I definitely want to touch on our specific budget process, our DNR public service code of ethics, our accessibility and anti-harassment policy, media contacts and the procedures there, and then our legislative policies. You can go to slide 4, actually. There you go. I wanted to go over just a little about our Department of Natural Resources and our mission, which globally is to manage and conserve Colorado's natural resources for the benefit of people today and tomorrow. And we have 6 divisions: water, land, wildlife, minerals, energy, outdoor recreation. And in this fiscal year, we have an annual budget of about $531 million. We have a little over 1,800 permanent staff, a little over 1,100 seasonal and temporary employees, mostly at Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and about 4,000 volunteers, mostly at Colorado Parks and Wildlife. And the next slide is just a visualization of the FTE and the budget. So as you can see, kind of the big bars in the middle are Colorado Parks and Wildlife. They're a little over 1,000 employees. Plus they do have the seasonals and the volunteers. And you can kind of see where all the other divisions line up with that. In our executive director's office, that budget also includes the Colorado State Wildfire Action Program and the Colorado Avalanche Information Center. So you'll see those grants. That's why we have a small number of FTE, but the budget is larger. I'll touch on the budget process in general. We begin that in March of every year. So it's about 16 months ahead of when we anticipate funding. We in the executive director's office, and Carly Jacobs, our chief financial officer, works with division staff to identify and prioritize needs. So what that looks like is essentially Carly's team reaching out to your team, specifically Director Rose Marino and Nick, to really talk about what are the budget needs. And those materials are deliberative and confidential within the executive branch until November 1st of each year. On November 1st, those become public information. The Joint Budget Committee starts considering them in public hearings throughout the legislative session. And I think the State Land Board in recent years have been very successful with some very well-defended budget requests to increase staffing. So we really appreciate all the good work. Nick did not pay me to say that. And so Next slide, in February and March, the Joint Budget Committee decides whether to approve the request, which is then codified into the long bill. And then all of those items become effective July 1st. And as you all know, this year with the state budget, it's very, very tight. Most of our divisions are funded through a combination of cash funds, federal grants, and we have very few that are funded solely with general fund. Our one division funded solely through general fund is the Division of Water Resources. So just expect a tight budget year. That being said, all of those materials become public November 1st. On the next slide, I'll go into the Public Service Code of Ethics. And in addition to the Colorado Code of Ethics and statutory requirements, we do have a Public Service Code of Ethics at the Department of Natural Resources. And it's really about transparency, accountability for our actions, and striving to meet or exceed those specific behaviors. And those behaviors are listed on the next slide, and you can kind of see there. It's essentially public service. I know many commissioners, many of us in the room had public service as a part of their careers, and you're no stranger to these principles. But this is listed in the Board and Commissions Handbook. Accessibility, we're very proud that all of our boards and commissions have such accessible public meetings. As you can see, we have people online. We do have a process for people to email access DNR at state.co.us if there's ever any accessibility issues. We have about 20 employees monitoring that inbox, so we can very quickly act on whatever those accessibility questions are. And then, including those statements in public meetings so that folks know how to access that information. The next slide goes over our DNR anti-harassment policy. This applies to all board and commission members, employees, anyone conducting state business. It outlines our complaint reporting and investigation procedures, and our HR director, Richard Fields, is our point of contact for that. For media contacts, members of the media may contact individual board and commission members. I don't know how often that happens with state land board commissioners, but to ensure transparency and the board speaking with one voice, that requires coordination with public information officers and staff liaisons. So individual members speaking on behalf of themselves and clearly saying, I'm speaking as an individual here, may speak to the media, but just be aware of the perception of speaking on behalf of the board. And for media contacts, Director Rose Marino, what is your preferred method? Should folks go to you first, or should we go straight to Emily?
Straight to Emily.
So straight to Emily Barbo. Okay. For legislative matters, Daphne Gervais is our legislative liaison, Director of Legislative Affairs, and she coordinates all communications with legislators and all department initiated legislation. So if you're contacted by a legislator for factual information or otherwise, really, we ask that Daphne is kept in the loop, but really in terms of kind of what would happen in practice, your first point of contact should be Director Rose Marino, consulting with your director, your staff liaison, and just realize that there's sort of always things going on. So there's year-round committees, even though the legislature is in session usually January through May. For positions on bills, as a department in the executive branch, the department does not take positions on bills unless approved to do so by the governor. And the department may take positions like support, oppose, amend, neutral, or no position. Again, this is incredibly important to coordinate with Director Rose Marino, your staff, on the department's position on a bill. Our leadership at all the divisions are plugged into our department's positions and plugged into weekly conversations about the legislative session. And as an individual member of a public body, any individual can take a position or offer testimony on personal time, clearly stating they're not acting in their official capacity. And then, you know, as kind of bills go through, that point of contact and that communication happens through your director. Any questions on that? Electioneering, just briefly touch on the Fair Campaign Practices Act restricts the use of public money to urge votes for or against statewide or local ballot initiatives or referred measures. That includes staff time, state resources. And again, individual board and commissioners are free, commission members are free to express their personal opinions using personal resources. But if they do so, clearly state that they're not speaking on behalf of the public body. I'm not sure that there's any ballot initiatives this year that directly impact state land board work. But if that were to be the case, definitely this is a very bright line to be aware of. And thank you. So, any questions? Right.
That was fast and
That was
fulsome.
fast.
Okay.
Thank you both very much.
You're welcome.
Right, Emily, over to you. The update on the summer conference of state trust.
Commissioner Rowe, a point of order, we forgot to mention a couple of comments we received in writing that we distributed to the.
Oh. Indeed, we did.
Wouldn't mind just
Yeah.
saying that for the record.
Yes. You. So yes, would like the public to know that the comments you submitted have been forwarded by Rachel, our administrative coordinator, and received by the commissioners. And Red, we thank you for taking the time to communicate with us. We do enjoy reading those and learn from them, so thank you.
Just a second. Advance, just click with the mouse. And then choose the keyword you want. There you go.
Great. Hello, commissioners. For the record, my name is Emily Barbo. I'm the State Land Board Public Information Officer, and I am joined by my colleague.
My name is Rachel Meyich. I'm the Executive Administrator and Office Manager for the State Land Board.
So the Colorado State Land Board is co-hosting the National Association of State Trust Lands annual conference in a couple of weeks. And Rachel and I are the main points of contact for organizing the conference. And so we wanted to give you an overview of a few things today. First, we'll talk briefly about the background of the National Association of State Trust Lands. We'll review the theme of the conference as well as some of the goals that we set for the event. We'll walk you through the agenda, and most importantly, we're here to address any of your questions and comments. So first, the National Association of State Trust Lands, or NASTL for short, dates back to the early 1930s, when land administrators from 8 Western states, Arizona, California, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming, met in Salt Lake City to discuss their shared issues. And looking back at that conference, it's actually remarkable. There are quite a few similarities of that first conversation to the one that we're going to have in a couple of weeks. I find it comforting that as an organization with such a storied history that some things change and some things never do. Colorado actually has hosted the conference 9 times, dating back to 1935. And then that initial agenda included themes like how do they manage the trust fund investments, a theme that you'll see in our conference. Questions around conservation and stewardship, federal partnerships, grazing management, and much, much more. So we hope and look forward to engaging in deep conversations with the other delegates of the National Association. So the conference will take place in 2 weeks, starting on Sunday, July 20th, and ending on Wednesday, July 23rd. The theme is resilience and stewardship, managing an intergenerational trust. And hopefully that sounds quite familiar because it was inspired by the Colorado State Land Board's mission statement to manage an endowment of assets held in perpetual intergenerational public trust for the financial support of Colorado's public schools and other public institutions. Obviously, our purpose as the Colorado State Land Board is to generate reasonable and consistent income over time. And in order to do that, you well know that staff make land management decisions now that protect and enhance the long-term productivity and sound stewardship of our working trust lands. So our management ethos must be, and we believe is, intergenerational. We are also very serious in our commitment to resilience and stewardship, and we believe that that commitment exists across all of the remaining 21 states who participate in NASTL. So our goals for the conference is to provide a unique experience for other employees of state land boards in those other states to come together. Not only sharing stories of success, but also talk about our challenges and opportunities, and hopefully build better relationships across state borders so that we can rely on those partnerships as we move forward and thinking about our beneficiaries over time. We also look forward to showcasing Colorado's unique approach to managing our 2.8 million acres of trust lands, as well as our 4 million acres of 4 million acres of mineral estate. In creating the agenda, it was particularly important for me to think about not only creating an interesting event that was also fun, but valuable. And by valuable, I mean, it's my hope that a staff member of another state land board come to this conference, hear an idea, ask a question, and bring that information back to their home state and apply it in a way that makes their lives easier and generates better outcomes for their beneficiaries. So with that, Rachel's going to share a little bit about our agenda that I think highlights those goals.
So the event will be co-located at History of Colorado Museum and the State Land Board office. It'll begin on Sunday, July 20th, and Sunday will feature a NASTL Executive Committee meeting, and then the exhibit hall will be open for the sponsors of our event and for guests to go meet with the sponsors and learn a little bit more about the different organizations. And then that will be followed by a welcome and networking reception. One of the biggest benefits of NASTL is connecting with other state land boards and building relationships. And the networking reception especially has been an important and valuable resource for our staff. Monday will be our first full day of the conference, beginning with opening remarks from NASTL President Sean Thomas and our State Land Board Director Rose Marino, followed by a Washington, D.C. update by Alan Freemeyer, NASTL's Education Outreach Consultant, as well as a welcome from Colorado's own Governor, Jared Polis. Following opening remarks will be the state and affiliate roll call. Roll call is an excellent way for our delegates and attendees to hear about successes and challenges of our sister organizations across the country. Each delegate provides an update on previous year's challenges, successes, questions, and opportunities for partnerships and collaboration. Roll call has also been a very beneficial tool for our staff in attending previous NASTL conferences. Following opening remarks and roll call, we'll start with our breakout sessions. And Monday's breakout sessions will feature staff and guest subject matter experts to present on geologic carbon capture, stewardship, and water. Tuesday, we will start off with our keynote speakers. Our first keynote speakers will be made up of a panel conversation that focuses on SB 25-167 and innovative uses of the permanent fund corpus dollars. The panel will include Mary Wickersham, the architect of SB 25-167, Matt Samuelson, best board member that was influential in the building of 167 and 1332 this year, and Kathy Gebhardt, who helped these guys build BEST in the first place. Our second keynote speaker will be Julie Murphy, Director of Energy and Carbon Management Commission, and that will focus on carbon industries. Following the keynote addresses will be the NASTL business meeting, and then additional breakout sessions that will focus on recreation, cultural resources, affordable housing. The affordable housing breakout session will feature a walking tour of our state land board affordable housing projects. And we're really excited to show that off to our sister agencies across the country. And then we will wrap up our formal agenda on Tuesday with a fun night at the Rockies game at Coors Field. So that has been fun to work with Rockies staff to make that event possible for our conference. Finally, on Wednesday, we will be doing a tour of the Lowry Ranch. So we'll be able to take conference attendees to our marquee property that will showcase our layered leasing practices. And it's a tremendous engine for advancing the organization's constitutional responsibilities. That tour, as outlined on our slide, will feature a history of the ranch, and we'll be able to show our different lines of business, particularly renewable energy, grazing management, oil and gas development, and water and recreation as well. So we kind of figured that would be a good point to show everything that the Colorado State Land Board does as a whole. So.
So obviously this is a big event, and we wouldn't be able to do it without some help. So in consultation with our partners at NASTL early on in the process, staff created an event budget, and from that, sponsorship goals. And then we also developed what I think was a pretty competitive sponsorship package that included marketing opportunities like inclusion in a press release, opportunities to table at the exhibit hall that Rachel mentioned throughout the event, as well as opportunities to speak during the conference. I think one of the other benefits of being a sponsor of this conference is that it demonstrates a commitment to the responsible stewardship of state trust lands that is woven throughout the agenda. And obviously, we were pretty successful given the number of logos you see on the screen. We, meaning Rachel and I, relied heavily on our program staff to reach out to their industry partners. And thanks to their diligent support and what I think demonstrates the depth and sincerity of the relationships that we have at the Colorado State Land Board, as well as the quality of the program we've put together, we more than doubled our sponsorship. And that being said, Rachel and I are handling the logistics of this event, which has been a lot of fun and has had a lot of challenges. But it would not at all be possible without the help and commitment of the entire Colorado State Land Board staff. I hope what you're seeing here on this slide is that it has been really a team effort. I think every program has, and actually almost every staff member actually has played some role in making this event not only happen, but meaningful. And like I said before, valuable to our sister organizations across the country. And if I could just pause for a moment of personal gratitude, this was the first project that I was handed when I joined the State Land Board in January. And it has been incredible, actually, to be able to work with all of these folks, and even more than they're just listed on this screen, to take on a piece of extra work, to be honest. They've all made time not only to invest in this event, but also to invest in me. And teaching me the intricacies of our various lines of business, and to show me what it means to put on an interesting event that's, like I said, not just entertaining but useful. So I really do appreciate our staff and their commitment and their support of me personally. So it has been a pleasure. It has been a bonding experience, and one I am not likely to forget anytime soon. So we are very excited that this event is coming up. We're very grateful that Commissioners Pribble and Heath will be joining us at this event, and we do hope that you folks will consider giving us an update in August about what you thought, what you learned, maybe some folks that you met. I think we would love to hear your perspective on our work. Yes, it is. And that is an image of Denver. And well, that concludes my prepared remarks, and we're happy to address any of your questions or comments.
I want to make a really important point about this. This wasn't a gigantic national organization that said, here's a conference, host it. It was, there's a conference coming to Denver in July, build it. And then host it. And the amount of work and passion that has gone into getting this done has been tremendous. We owe you real big thanks for pulling this off. And to all staff that are listening, that have helped get this done, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we're super excited to be hosting this and showing off what makes us so awesome. Colorado State Land Board.
I'd love to add to that, Nick. Yes, I am just super impressed that, and honored that our land board gets to put this on this year. It seems so timely, so many things, the new ambitions we have and some of the programs we already have totally tutored on home. And I would add to that too, I am so unbelievably sad that I can't come because I've been wanting to come and thinking about this for a long time. So my request to the staff that's attending and to my two fellow commissioners is, please, can we have an update of really those ahas or the things that grabbed you that we can work with? And Nicole, place that on the agenda for August, because it's time.
I have two questions. How many people are expected?
We were planning ambitiously for around 130. I think our registration report hit 100 the last time I
Yes.
checked.
And I could not come, but I could come one day. I don't know if it's too late for that.
I think if you want to come,
Let me know what day,
I could only come Monday.
Monday?
She can only come for the Rockies.
Yeah. I can come watch the Rockies list.
Great, well, then you also signed up for participating in our August update. So we also have to report on
I
Monday.
can't come at all, but now I can come Monday. I still can't come Tuesday.
No problem,
We'll take care of it.
Okay.
Thank you all very much for your exciting reporting, for doing it all.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I'm going to pass out a handout for our next presentation. Shannon?
You.
How's it going? You should be familiar.
Katie, just give me a second.
large format. This is one I'm on backup, right?
Yes. I just made it bigger. Not when I was- Well, maybe not. Here in case we want to.
Mark, you seeing us okay? Yep.
Thank you.
Is there anything else I can help
It was wondering, right.
You're ready to go.
Right, well, good afternoon, commissioners. Katie Stitt, I'm the oil and gas leasing manager from State Land Board. Thought I'd take a quick second since I rolled into town to be late to meet the new commissioners. I grew up in Southern Colorado. I've lived here pretty much my entire life, except for the time I went and lived on the East Coast when I went to law school. I have a bachelor of science degree in biological sciences with an emphasis in cell and molecular biology. That will become relevant when I talk about geology, which is not what I studied. And I have a law degree from Vermont Law School. I am a certified professional landman through the American Association of Professional Landmen, and I've also completed their certificate program in renewable energy. So a lot of this is what I enjoy learning about and talking about. So I'm going to try to keep myself on some guide rails so I don't spin off, but I will throughout the opportunity. If you have questions or just want to chat about oil and gas or energy, I'm always happy to talk about this stuff. So we're going to talk about the leasing process on state trust lands today. This is an information item to discuss the oil and gas leasing process on state trust lands. Since we have quite a few new staff, since we did this presentation last in 2020, and we have several new commissioners, the Energy Innovation Team thought now would be a good time to discuss how this business line generates new leases and just general lease management for oil and gas. Oil and gas is currently the largest revenue generating activity on state trust lands. For the last 20 years, oil and gas leasing and production has generated between 70 and 80% of the state land board's annual revenues. The vast majority of those revenues benefit the school trust. Leasing for oil and gas includes leasing for all gases that may associate with hydrocarbons. So that includes helium, carbon dioxide, and natural gas. Each of those components has their own monetary value, but revenue generation is only part of the story. Our staff and commissioners act as fiduciaries for the 8 trusts the land board manages, and the largest of which is the school trust. As fiduciaries, we have a legal and ethical obligation to act solely in the best interest of the trust beneficiaries, mainly the school children of Colorado, current and future. I always mention this when I talk to folks because folks say, oh, well, you work for the taxpayers. We really don't. We work for the school kids. Our mission is a dual mission where we must consider earning revenue for the trust, but we also equally have to consider the stewardship of the land for future generations so that those lands can earn equal revenues in the future. That's why we define stewardship as an ethic that embodies the responsible planning and management of resources. And this is why revenue generation is not the only consideration when making leasing recommendations and decisions. So just some highlights for the oil and gas business line. The board currently has 665 active oil and gas leases, which include leases in production and those in the primary term. The primary term is the initial 5-year term of a lease where an operator can take action to establish production on the lease. 505 leases out of that 665 are considered capable of production, meaning that a well's been drilled developing the minerals, or the lease has been committed to a planned development through a specific process called unitization. Those leases generated about $183 million last year. To compare it to our agency, we have about 7,600 leases across all business lines, and those leases generated about $228 million. So you can tell oil and gas makes up a big chunk of the monies we make each year. Oil and gas, while generating a significant portion of the revenue, encumbers a relatively small part of the mineral estate acreage that we manage. Currently, we have about 313,000 of those mineral acres leased for oil and gas. That's just a hair over 8% of our total mineral estate that we manage across the state. 211,000 of those acres are actually producing oil and gas. So this is about 5.2% of our mineral estate. But that 5.2% of our mineral acres makes up 80% of our revenues. So it's not a lot of what we manage, but it makes up a lot of money for what it does. All of our new leases have stewardship requirements in the form of stipulations to protect wildlife and habitat corridors. And our lease has provisions to address protections for cultural resources and wetland areas. I'm going to touch on stipulations in a bit more detail a little bit later in the discussion. Because our lands are subject to state and local land use regulations, all operators are required to obtain state and local permits in order to develop a state oil and gas lease. That's pretty important because just getting a lease with our office doesn't mean you get special privileges. You don't get to hop the line. You're leasing from our agency, and we're no different than a private owner of minerals. So there's no special consideration for having a state oil and gas lease. Colorado is considered to be one of, if not the most stringently regulated states in the United States for oil and gas development. And we have detailed rules and processes that operators have to follow in order to develop an oil and gas resource. These rules ultimately mean that Colorado's oil and gas is some of the cleanest production of oil and gas in the world. Our leasing process adds to that and is one of the more complex reviews where we review concerns with wildlife and other events on the property.
prior to leasing, and we provide those in stipulations, but then we review it all again prior to development to make sure nothing's changed on the property. Our current oil and gas lease is upwards of 30 pages, which frequently I've asked operators tell me all the time about what a nice reading chunk that is. But that's significantly longer than the half-page sheet lease we used when we issued our first oil and gas leases in the 1880s. So let's dive into this process in a little more detail. And if you have questions while we go through this, feel free to stop me. So this is the infographic that we handed out in a larger form for the folks in the room. If you're online, this is also on our website. It's in the board packet, so hopefully you can zoom in as well. You can see that the process to develop an oil and gas lease can be quite long. This infographic shows in high level the various steps that can happen during the life of the lease. And to start, I'm just gonna highlight this portion of the infographic in the red box in the upper right. So the process will start with a land nomination and review. Typically, these are third-party nominations. Anyone can nominate a particular tract of land for oil and gas leasing. Staff will on occasion nominate, but mass majority of our nominations come from industry. Not all tracts will make it through a review process. A few reasons why a tract might not make it through this very first step is if we don't own the minerals. We sometimes get nominations from folks where we own the, say, surface acreage, but we don't own the minerals below. Or folks just think we must own it because it's a section 16, but we don't actually own all the section 16s. So there's a reason that they may nominate minerals that we don't own. When we do a review, sometimes we see that we've leased the property for a use that might be incompatible with oil and gas leasing. If there's a gas storage lease or carbon sequestration, like those might not be compatible with oil and gas development, so wouldn't make it through this stage of the review. We also identify if we have sensitive ecosystem concerns or wildlife concerns that we may not want to move forward with at the time. And so we can pull a tract at this very initial stage. Once we complete our review, we get a list and we send it out to subject matter experts. So these are folks outside of our agency, but also other business lines within our agency to get their feedback. The main one we reach out is to Colorado Parks and Wildlife. But we also will send it out to the Energy and Carbon Management Commission's local government designee program. Those are folks that local governments across the state have registered with ECMC as their contact points to receive notices about oil and gas development and activity in their communities. So we've kind of hijacked their list and we send out our list to them as well, so they can provide comments from a local perspective on what may be going on in that area. We get all of these comments back and then we'll have a group meeting, myself, minerals director, our ecosystem services manager, conservation services manager, I guess is her title now, our biodiversity manager, and we'll go through all the comments and we come up with a list with stipulations for every tract that we move forward with. So if we make it to this point, we have a list with stipulations and we present it to the board. So a little later, I'm going to bring a list in front of the board today for consideration, and that's all of the tracts on that list have gone through this phase already. So if the board approves moving forward, the tracts are offered for lease through a bidding process on EnergyNet, which EnergyNet is kind of like an online eBay. They focus on land sales. And leasing, I shouldn't say sales. They do land sales. We do not sell our land through EnergyNet, to be clear. We only are offering leases through EnergyNet. So if a tract receives bids, a lease will ultimately be issued. And that lease will generate rental income, possibly a bonus payment if multiple parties are interested in that same tract. It's a competitive bidding process. The more people involved, the higher the bonus goes. So if you're familiar with eBay, it's kind of the same process. All of that money generated will benefit the trust, which in this infographic is depicted by the school picture. Historically, 88% of the leases the board has issued have never gone into production. So this means that a lessee would get a lease and they'll pay their rental, they may pay a bonus. But nothing happens on the land, so the board won't receive royalties through this process. If nothing happens on the property, the lease will expire at the end of the 5-year term, and the land can be renominated for a new oil and gas lease again, in which case it goes back through this whole review process again. So we just talked about a lease that doesn't go into production. Well, what about the leases that do go into production? They'll start through the same process we just outlined. They go through the nomination review, board approval on auction and Energy Net. The rental and bonus revenues are still paid to that trust. But obtaining a lease does not guarantee that the lessee can move into a production phase. So at that point, the lessee must go through all local, state, and federal permitting regulations. I'll spend a little bit of time going through these. This regulation process on the infographic is depicted in this big box down below. None of this is something that the land board does. It's all regulators that are either the Energy and Carbon Management Commission's process or your local governments, could be city, could be county. So all of those have a little bit different process. For the ECMC in particular, they have multiple opportunities for the public to provide additional comment on proposed oil and gas development when an operator proposes a development plan and initial surface location. Also, when an operator applies for spacing, which is the defined area they're going to develop. And when they apply for pooling, which is when all the minerals involved get put into a single pool for development. When the ECMC issues a permit, there's an opportunity for public comment. At all of these phases, it is possible for the regulatory body to say, no, this is not what we want. And those can be denied, and that kind of puts an end to potential development unless the operator decides to revise their plan and come back. Same with local and county permits that also have to be obtained. You could get a state permit, but not get a local permit, and well, you don't get to there either. There's plenty of opportunities for the public to get involved in this stage as well. This is usually when you hear about it in the news. So if an operator manages to negotiate their way through this process, they get their permits, then it is also possible that a well still may not be drilled. Projects require financing, and frequently you have to do some geologic surveying to make sure that where you want to drill is actually like a good place to drill. And sometimes those don't work out, and you may get a permit, but may not do anything. Permits expire after 3 years. And so we may still have nothing happen on the land. Assuming that they are successful and drill a well, we will receive a royalty from that production. Our current royalty rate is 20%, is the initial royalty rate we offer on our new leases. And those monies then go into the appropriate trust, largely the school trust. So now I've gone through those two sections of this infographic, and I'll just pause to see if there are questions.
Madam Chair, what's the reason that 88% of leases don't go to exchange?
Could be a number of reasons. Could be that frequently oil and gas operators will target a specific area, but they don't want to advertise that widely, so they'll lease a bunch of land, focus on the one area that they're really interested in. It could be that they couldn't negotiate the permitting process, couldn't meet those requirements, or there were things that were in the area that made it difficult to do. Financing to fall through, federal, state, political processes may impact the viability of some projects. It could be any number of reasons. But when we looked at our leases issued over time, as far back as we can find recordings of that give us a good indication of what's going on, 88% of them never moved into stage of production. So we have lands out there that have been leased for oil and gas dozens of times. Nothing has ever happened. But each time we make revenue for the school trust. Okay.
Katie?
Oh,
Can I
yes.
ask a question? Sorry. Of the leases nominated by that third party, any sense of how many are rejected or accepted by the staff, your staff?
It depends. Sorry, that's the legal trained answer. Some of the nominations are fairly straightforward and we move those through the process from staff. I can think of several examples where we did decline leasing, where we had substantial bighorn sheep habitat. That's a species that CPW provides lots of comments on. At the same time, we also internally have a lot of familiarity with the particular habitat where these nominations were because we have a recreation lease involving bighorn sheep. And at the time, the proposed development was so new and not really sure where it was going. We didn't feel comfortable moving forward with a leasing process at that point with what we knew about the project. So we pulled it pretty early in our review process. But I would say that on average, we probably pull 1 to 2 nominations each auction if they're coming from outside parties for a variety of reasons. The ones
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is 40, I think that in this round it was like 43 leases. Is that a typical round of the 1 or 2 you'd pull?
Well, I will say, and I mentioned this later in my auction presentation, this is actually a much larger list of nominations than we've had in some time.
Okay.
So we've been averaging about 10 nominations per auction list, probably the last 3 or 4 years. So we've had quite a bit of new interest or renewed interest on this list that we're going to bring in front of you to consider today. But I would say on average, we pull probably 1 at least off of even some of those smaller nomination lists.
Interesting.
Could be a variety of things that are going on. Obviously, there's been an administration change at the federal level. I caution that possibility with the fact that there may be a more open discussion on federal level, but all of the actual regulation for oil and gas goes on at the state level, and we've not had a substantial change in our viewpoint in Colorado. We have a very robust regulatory process that's been in place now for 5 years, largely. I think some operators may find that maybe finding some financing for certain types of projects, particularly things looking for helium in particular, which has kind of been identified as a potential resource we need to look at developing domestically. That may influence some of the ability to get financing to move some of these projects forward. So there could be a lot that generates that type of interest.
And would you say, I gather on the top of your flow chart after you or during the time you guys were reviewing it, the CW, Colorado Parks and Wildlife reviews it as well. Any sense of, I don't know, their rate of rejection relative to yours, or are you guys doing it at the same time?
I would say that CPW and our staff is fairly in alignment most of the time. I can think of some auction nominations that we've had maybe back in like 2017 where they were recommending certain things that we didn't necessarily agree with. That does not mean that we disregarded their comments, but we may have wanted to do more of the review process at the development stage then rather than at the auction stage. So if you look at some of our stipulation language, which I'll talk about in a minute too, you'll see a lot of comments about consultation. You have to meet with us, you have to meet with CPW, you have to do these things. And that's really to identify like property specific or more regional specific concerns when they start their development of their project in whole, rather than at the leasing stage. You can take a lease, but maybe down the road you figure out that that's really not going to be an appropriate use there. But we want to provide operators as much knowledge up front with what they're buying. You know, they're paying money for a lease. We want to be fair to them as well and say, if you're going to operate on our lands, this is the expectation. You better be prepared to meet this level of expectation. I think that, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Okay, so along the top, I assume if it gets to auction, the various agencies have have said it might be appropriate or it is appropriate. And at the bottom, it's all the fine tuning, all the stipulations, all the places, the roads, the wellheads, all that stuff. Is that kind of the way it works?
I would say that that is an accurate statement, yes.
Okay.
All right. So, kind of big picture, since 88% of our leases never generate royalties, why is it important to continue leasing? And I get this question a lot. So new leases are the most common ways new oil and gas wells are drilled. And at a 30,000 foot level, that's important because new wells are required to come online continuously to keep production levels stable to meet the demand of consumers in the United States, but also worldwide. But if we talk about on a more local reason, regardless of whether or not a lease enters production, the money generated from issuing those new leases ultimately goes to help fund projects that matter to Colorado communities and school children. So this is my elementary school. I'm probably one of the few staff that's actually come up through Colorado's education system, but this is my elementary school. This building was constructed in 1950. I attended in the 90s, probably dating myself now, but we had challenges even when I attended there 40 years after, construction. I will say I think the school district I attended has done a great job maintaining their buildings with the best their ability. But starting in probably 2013, 2015, they started approaching the community about we need to replace this building because there were some substantial problems. So in 2018, the school district was able to obtain a BEST grant, and they replaced the school in its entirety. And starting in 2020, students were able to attend school in this building, which is very good.
Say where this is.
This is in Canyon City. This is my hometown.
Local girl makes good.
Yes. So the work we do does have a big impact on the community. Obviously, schools are where kids go to learn, but communities use them for a variety of events. So to have a nice new facility like this is a big deal, especially in the smaller towns. So new buildings like this are the ultimate end result of the thoughtful and comprehensive way that we review new leasing opportunities. And this is across all business lines. It's not just oil and gas. We review them to make sure that these opportunities are in line with our mission, fiduciary duties, and our strategic plan. So I wanted to talk just a little bit more about stipulations. I went through a lot of this in your cover sheet, so I may not go as in detail, but starting in 2008, staff began attaching special stipulations to leases to protect specific natural values or other identified concerns on the property and to improve overall stewardship associated with oil and gas development on state trust lands. This process then continued to evolve. So starting in 2011, staff implemented our current internal and external review process, consulting with Colorado Parks and Wildlife and other subject matter experts. So we would start getting stipulation language that we would use on multiple leases. So that evolved in 2013, where we decided to use those special stipulations, but we were also going to create general stipulations. So there are 4 stipulations. Each lease receives at least one of them. So every lease goes out with at least one of these stipulations on them. And the version it gets depends on if there's a biological impact that was identified at the time of our initial leasing review, and if the land board owns the surface estate above the minerals we're leasing. This allowed us to notify the potential bidders of what they might be looking at when they move to develop the lease. But it also provided us a flexible way to address new land concerns at the time of development. And this makes a lot of sense because I think if you review the packet, you'll see that we give a lot of stipulations on properties. But most development happens 4 to 5 years after the lease is issued. So, things change on a piece of property. So we wanted to have a way to address those concerns closer to development. And that's what these general stipulations allow us to do. As the regulatory structure for oil and gas has continued to change as well, so has the approach through the permitting process. So many of the same concerns identified in our pre-auction review are now also identified through the local and state permitting processes, which adds additional protections and resources for wildlife and critical habitats and ecosystems. This is also helpful because these new regulations help bridge the gap on some of our older oil and gas leases, because 57% of the active oil and gas leases we have were issued prior to 2008. So that means they don't necessarily have stipulations that our staff. But this new regulatory process allows any new development on those older leases, they have to go through this very similar review process to the regulatory agencies. And so you'll see some of these enhanced wildlife protections on new proposed development on older oil and gas leases. So having stipulations in the lease is a solid step, but how does this translate into real world application? So in 2021, staff completed a comprehensive audit of leases and their stipulations to determine whether or not operators have complied with those stipulations at the beginning of development on a lease. So stipulations are not a one and done thing. You propose a pad, we review it for the stipulations, things move forward or they don't. You propose a second pad somewhere else, we review the stipulations again. So one lease, like, it's not just a check mark saying this lease complied, it's something that we have to ongoing and manage. But in 2021, when we completed our audit, we were pleased to discover that out of the leases that we looked at that had the stipulations on them, there was 100% compliance from our operators with the stipulations in those leases. So staff continues to monitor the stipulation compliance as operators continuing developing leaseholds, but this was a good sign that this process does work. We can ensure that we're not disturbing lands during certain periods of the year, or that we're getting the surveys that we need for wildlife. So it is work.
Katie, this was going to be one of my questions for today, so I'm glad you covered it. Following question is then at a higher level. So this is about compliance on a operating activity basis. The real test, of course, is populations, I suppose, you know, the populations of these species that we're trying to mitigate those impacts. And I'm wondering, are we working with CPW? Is there any plan to maybe like every 5 or 10 years do wildlife or species audits to see what's happening with populations?
We don't currently do that, but that's an interesting thing that we could look at doing.
So it's this real different between, it's like, yeah, we're doing this, but then the question is this working?
Yes. There are areas in the state where we have additional protection plans that I'm also going to talk about during the list that I do next. But there are ongoing monitoring, as like CPW does some of that. We do get that data. So because seeing what happens to populations as activity occurs can impact or limit any additional development in those areas. Yeah. So it is something that in some ways is coming up, but it's not something directly that like the oil and gas business.
Right. I'm just thinking about like CPW 2 under these Endangered Species Acts and whatnot. There's some need to monitor populations in general. So anyway, it's an idea. Interesting.
Katie, is there a public comment period before it goes to auction after the third party has nominated these leases and it's gone by the three agencies?
This actually, the board meeting when we present the lease tract list to the board for your approval is considered the public comment period for those tracts. Because we use the comments generated from our third party subject experts, our business line managers, and then the minerals team. We've kind of gone through our initial weeding out of tracts that may not be appropriate for leasing at this point. And so that's what we bring to the board for your discussion and review. And then the public obviously can come and comment on any of the tracts that we propose leasing on. I think nobody's left on the board from 2017. We've had lists where the public has become very invested in having feedback on them. So sometimes we don't get a lot of comments. Sometimes you will feel like you're maybe the Energy and Carbon Management Commission and you get hundreds of comments. So it just depends on where tracts are located.
And Are there public notices in each county where these leases would be proposed?
Most of the local government designees have a process how they notify the public, whether it's through their Board of County Commissioner meetings, they post them publicly. That's
Mhm.
not something that we do, like we don't proactively go out and put signs up in the counties. This is, our track lists are posted on our website through the board packet, like all of our other leasing considerations. But I do know through my conversations with the local governments that they do post and do outreach at the local community level, or as they would with any oil and gas proposed developments.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Purple.
Thank you. When you do get comment, can you categorize or generalize about what the comments are about, or substantive?
I mean, high level, most of the comments that we've received in the past from the public are, we don't want this here.
Okay.
It can be for a variety of reasons, health and safety concerns, truck traffic. I would classify a lot of the comments as being more really appropriately based in the regulatory phase of potential development. But we definitely take all the comments that we receive from the public and evaluate them. Let me give an example real quick. So several years ago, we had a nomination down in Huerfano County. Huerfano County has had oil and gas development in the past. It's largely coal bed methane, so it's a little bit more shallow development. There was problems with migration of some of that methane. It was getting into people's wells, the movies you see where things set on fire. I think at the time, the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission, which is now the ECMC, I think they took appropriate steps to require the operator to figure out what was going on. Why is this migrating? Where is it coming from? But what ultimately ended up happening is they couldn't clearly determine, and this is what happens with geology. Sometimes things move and you don't really know why. Ultimately, that project was shut down. The requirements that they were going to have to do to continue production in that area were so expensive that the operators said, well, we're not gonna move forward. So we had someone else come in and nominate lands in that same area. The local government designee, I thought, did a great job communicating with us the concern to the community and their county commissioners about why this was not something they really wanted to open up again. And we pulled it. We decided we weren't gonna lease those until an operator could come and say, hey, we've worked with now ECMC, we have a development plan to address these community concerns, why we're going to be different than what had happened in the past. So we do take the public comments into consideration in our review just as much as, say, the third parties or local government designees when they take the time to provide a comment. For those listening, I hope you do provide comment.
Yeah, follow up here. Do we ever as a consequence of public comment, do we ever refer it back to ECMC? Since they're the regulatory body, we are not.
Yeah, frequently a lot of our comments do say at this point you should consult, you should follow the ECMC process. But that depends. A lot of comments come in when development occurs, and then they come to us and say, why did you issue the lease? The lease was issued 4 or 5 years ago or longer. So we do take the time to engage with the public and have a conversation, but a lot of the comments that come in, say about truck traffic or specific development, at that point has to go through the regulatory stage because the lease has already been issued.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so after the auction, staff creates the lease itself and creates a record in our asset management system for tracking. The stipulations and other notes relevant to that lease are then saved in that record, so anybody across our agency has access to this information. If a lessee moves forward with development on the lease, they'll work with our staff to identify a pad location. And this could be a pad that's not on our surface, somewhere else, but they still have to tell us, hey, we're proposing development from this location. If it is on state surface, the field specialist and the district manager would meet with that lessee on site to identify a preferred pad location. Other relevant staff as well as CPW staff also attend these meetings or they hold separate meetings with the lessee to sign off on that proposed location. New reviews with Colorado Parks and Wildlife and the Colorado Natural Heritage Program are completed. So that's when we might create additional stipulations or limitations on that lease. And they have to be addressed at that time prior to any surface disturbance and before they move forward with proposing that surface location in their permitting process. So it is possible at that point, we may not come to an agreement and that could be an end to development there. So once the pad location is identified, then the lessee can go ahead and move forward with applying for their permits. Local permits can vary in requirements. Having, like as mentioned, the state lease does not exempt a lessee from having to meet those requirements. The process to obtain a local permit frequently involves an opportunity where the public can come and address that regulatory body as well. But that process varies in each jurisdiction. The state permitting process can involve multiple processes where there's public comment allowed in each phase of that process. And the state process does require operators to notify communities and residents near proposed operations as part of their permitting process. And then that regulatory process provides an opportunity for comment. So frequently that's when you get a lot of the comments from folks that have moved in, they didn't know. This is where they're getting that notification is frequently the operators when they're at that stage of development. So presuming that a lessee can obtain the necessary permits, there may be additional requirements in our lease they also have to meet. So the lease requires a bond to be submitted prior to any operations on our property to address performance issues as well as lease reclamation and unpaid lease obligations such as rent and royalties. So once they get a permit, they have to file a bond with our office. If they fail to do something, that's money that we can then collect and use to rectify issues. That money is the answer. The lease also requires insurance to be covered. The lessee has to take out an insurance policy. The lease requires or provides for a liquidated damages provision if a lessee violates terms of the lease and then fails to rectify within a certain period of time. So we can kind of create our own fines if you fail to move along with curing this problem. And then the lease also includes paragraphs to address protection of state and federal prehistoric, historic, and archaeological resources. Those are all controlled by statute, so there's reporting requirements, but if we find out you didn't do what you were supposed to do, we have that in our lease, so we can also return default for that. Audits for both financial compliance and lease compliance can be done during the lifetime of the lease, so that's something staff does on a regular, ongoing basis. I just wanted to briefly touch on what happens when the lease ends, because we're talking about leasing process. Most of it happens to get a lease into development, but eventually development ends. So as I mentioned earlier, only 12% of the leases we've historically issued ever went into production. That means the vast majority of the leases we issue have expired on their own terms, usually at the end of that 5th year. And at that point, all those lands can be renominated for a new lease, or they could just sit waiting for someone to decide whether they want to nominate them again. So leases that do have production established can produce for many years. Our oldest still producing lease was issued in 1926, so it's almost 100 years old.
Where is that?
It's in Moffat County. So, decline curves in production do mean that at some point wells are no longer economically viable and they should be plugged and abandoned. When a lease no longer has a well capable of production on it, the lease will automatically end and the lands revert back to the state land board's mineral inventory. The ECMC is who regulates the plugging and abandonment process, so that's done through them. And it includes things like the abandonment of associated flow lines. But when we do own the surface, ECMC does consult with us about reclamation strategies. So for things like, do we want the flow lines pulled out of the ground and we have to reclaim the land above that? Pipeline abandonment, same thing. They also ask us if we want specific seed mixes. So like for certain lands that we do things with, this is a little out of my wheelhouse, are there certain seed mixes we prefer to use? So they do consult with us on all of that when we own the surface. So the ultimate goal is that once reclamation is complete, it's not gonna be obvious that an oil and gas pad was once there. Once a lease ends, the lands can be leased for future development for oil and gas or for other uses. But I don't want to ignore the fact that sometimes the end of a lease is not this straightforward. There are operators out there that choose to walk away from their wells, leave a liability on our property. And that can ultimately result in them going through a process with the ECMC where their license to operate in the state can be revoked. Bonds and other collaterals have been seized, and the wells then become part of the orphaned well program. Operators in general in the state do contribute towards plugging and abandonment of orphaned wells through a variety of means, but I don't want to ignore the fact that taxpayer money is frequently involved in correcting some of these issues. So our staff's goal is try to avoid getting that phase of the problem. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on a day-to-day basis that we do, so we don't end up in that scenario.
And as part of that upfront, when you were the track record, the financial capacity of the operator.
Some of that goes into that, but that's one of the reasons why we have bonding in place, and that's one of the reasons why Steve goes out and inspects facilities on a regular basis. We do audits to their leasing so that we can find earlier in the process if there's problems. Typically, once you've waited until these wells are kind of at end of life, there's not a lot of money around to fix problems. So that was kind of the end of my prepared remarks, but if you have other questions, I'm happy to chat more about this.
I think earlier you or Crystal said a large percentage of it comes in the early stage of the well. Can you repeat that or?
Payment, money generation?
The production.
Okay, yeah. So production from an oil and gas well is always highest right near the initial drilling, and that's geologically speaking. Everything's pressurized, things flow nice and freely up through the well, and you get most of it at that point. So for horizontal wells, what we're seeing is that after about 18 months, you're seeing a pretty steep drop off in production. So when we talk about trying to keep a production level at a standard amount, that's why new wells have to come online. Because as those initial wells drop off in production, you need new wells to come online to make up the difference. Vertical wells can kind of come and go. Operators have ways of stimulating production. You can repressurize wells. You can treat them with gas, which can pressurize a reservoir. But ultimately, at the end, wells do become uneconomic to try to do anything. But we make most of our money that initial 18 months after production's established on this. Thank you.
Katie, I think from my understanding, there's been a pattern in the oil and gas industry to, once a well has played out, not entirely, but mostly to sell to another undercapitalized wildcatter. And even though they're bonded, even though they're supposed to do the reclamation, they often declare bankruptcy in the state or, the feds or whatever, wherever the land is left with the cleanup. And generally very costly, or you're just left with this, leaking wells or leaking pipes. Has that been the experience of the state land board, or how do you get around that?
I'm going to acknowledge that what you said there is something that you could say for oil and gas operators, but I don't think that that is the majority of operators out there. I think that there are a lot of small wildcat operators who buy wells that are probably towards the end of their lifespan. They'll eke out as much as they can, and then they'll come in and plug them. And I do think that that is the majority of the operators. But you have a few widely published cases of some operators who choose to exit differently. We have some wells that were abandoned by operators. Steve works with the ECMC to get them addressed to the orphan well program. If we have bonding money, we can utilize bonding to help contribute towards ECMC getting those wells plugged and addressed sooner than later. But ECMC does have a list of how they approach those. Obviously, wells that have environmental liabilities, they're actively leaking, they're actively venting, need to get plugged before any others. So we definitely do look at who is, like, where leases are going, like how they're being transferred.
Mhm.
You know, I think we actively manage the lease, so when we start seeing problems, we try to address it early in the process rather than waiting.
Right. Okay.
So the ones that I would say are kind of our larger contingency, I think that there's been other problems that have led to rapid decline of those companies, that those are the ones that I would say impact us the most.
Mhm.
Where there was some big event that bankrupted a company. Could we have foreseen it? Sure, you can foresee anything. It wasn't something we deemed likely. And that's where we end up with some of these operators on trust lands. That's my assessment of that scenario.
Thank you.
Yep. Go ahead,
Crystal
Chris.
Granda, the Mills Director. I just wanted to add to what Katie said. The ECMC has new bonding regulations that also protect against that. They now collect a fee against operators that goes specifically toward plugging and abandoning wells that are abandoned. And then they also have a new bonding system that requires like these performance bond plans to be submitted to the ECMC. And if the ECMC deems that a well is older and more likely to be abandoned, the bond is increased to make sure that they cover it. So there's a couple of different mechanisms in place that they have put in practice that will help with that too.
Any other questions, Commissioner? Maybe that was a very comprehensive refresher in my case anyway. You know, every time I learn a little something new, so thank you, Randy. And I guess we'll see you again.
Now.
Right, yes. Rolling right into it.
Announce.
All right. So again, good afternoon, Commissioners. Katie Stitt, Oil and Gas Leasing Manager. Today I am presenting the oil, gas, and helium lease auction track list for the August 2025 auction. This is a final action item today, requesting the board's approval of this track list. The request is presented to the board as it falls outside this scope of the decision-making authority delegated to staff by Oil and Gas Development Policy 500-001. I just wanted to further explain a difference. There are two lists, quote unquote, that staff use to request board approval of proposed tracks, but today we just have the one, the standard list. A supplemental list could exist to bring tracks to the board for proposed leasing that our subject matter experts have recommended a no lease or a complete no surface occupancy on that tract, or if there's other special considerations staff wants the board to be particularly aware of while you're considering your decision on whether or not to offer that tract for leasing. The standard list is the tracts that staff and subject matter experts have reviewed and are recommending moving forward with leasing, usually with special stipulations included. But we don't want this to come across as this is like a rubber stamp list. These tracts simply meet the criteria to recommend them for leasing using the normal process outlined by the board's oil and gas development policy. So I just wanted to explain the difference, how this list comes versus a supplemental list. We don't frequently have supplemental lists, mainly because a lot of those tracts would be removed from leasing consideration. So it's not a common time to have a supplemental list, but it may come. So This item does relate to the oil and gas leasing program. And I would say that this list really reflects a new statewide interest in leasing. So we received 44 nominations from industry for this auction for tracks located in all 6 of our districts. And this is the first time this has happened since 2017. So it's been quite some time since we've had such a geographically diverse set of nominations. Staff is recommending moving forward with leasing on 43 of the nominations. The single removal is one track that has an existing oil and gas lease on it that we did review since someone nominated it, and it does remain valid. So that track is not available for leasing at this time. So the auction, the August auction standard track list contains 43 tracks, which is approximately 25,000 acres for your consideration today. The tracks themselves are indicated on the map by the reddish dots, and they're located in Cheyenne, Huerfano, Los Animas, Lincoln, Lincoln, Moffett, and Washington counties, which are outlined in blue on the map. They're supposed to be shaded blue. Perhaps online they're a little bit darker. For the tracks that are on the eastern part of the state, so the tracks in the counties that are on the right, operators have more recently been exploring for helium. And helium is an inert, non-toxic gas, serves critical roles in various industries, including cryogenics, superconductive magnet cooling. So for example, your MRI scanners, which anybody who knows me knows I've had lots of MRIs recently. They use helium in welding and various aviation capacities, such as rocket fuel and some jet fuels. Cheyenne County has historic production of helium gas, and they have a helium processing plant located in the county. And recently, there have been very successful test wells drilled in Los Animas County in the south central part of the state. And there are plans there to drill additional test wells. Traditional oil and gas development has also occurred in these counties with mixed results. Much of this area on the eastern plains here lies on a geologic structure known as the Los Animas Arch. And here's where I am not a geologist. So my layman understanding of this arch has geology where it creates pockets of oil and gas. So you could drill a well and you would hit one of these pockets and you have a great producing well. You could go 100 meters away, drill a well, and you might have what's called a dry hole, meaning you don't get gas or oil. So the structure is very difficult to parse out where exactly a successful well might be. If you were to look at a map, you'll see a lot of testing going on in this area. They've done geologic, called seismic surveying. Some of those areas have more surveying that have been done than others, so you'll see more interest in those areas than in other parts of the Los Animas Arch. But that's kind of explaining the development structure out in the eastern part of the state. That's also why any kind of potential leasing in this area is considered exploratory in nature, because we just don't know what you're going to get. If you look up in Moffett County in the northwest part of the state, or the upper left of the map, they've had producing oil and gas in the county since the early 1900s. But these tracts would also be considered exploratory in nature because a lot of the producing fields in Moffett County have not been well defined. So we don't know where you're going to get strong results versus somewhere else in the county. So our tracts on this list would be offered at the board's standard 20% royalty rate. The auction would open on energynet.com on Thursday, August 14th, and would close the following Thursday. And if you're ever interested in watching this, everything happens really in the last hour on Thursday, the 21st. So if you want to watch people actively bidding, that would be a good time. As detailed in the cover sheet, the tracts were reviewed per the board's policy. And I wanted to just discuss a couple of things. So all the stipulations that staff is recommending for these proposed tracts are on Exhibit 2 to your cover sheet. But just to highlight a few, there are 2 stewardship action plans involved on nominations here. The Greater Sage Grouse Stewardship Action Plan in Moffett County and the Lesser Prairie Chicken Stewardship Action Plan in Cheyenne County. The special stipulations for those tracks include the recommendations that are in the stewardship action plan, and those have been reviewed with our ecosystem services manager and the biodiversity manager. So if you recall, stewardship action plans are plans that the board has approved. They may have requirements or for an operator that are above and beyond even what maybe CPW would recommend. It may include a larger look at the area to see if development is appropriate. So any kind of wildlife population decline that may then curtail any future development, or may require additional mitigation measures to address habitat destruction. So these plans are a lot more broad, but the stipulations on these proposed tracks meet the requirements in those stewardship action plans themselves as well. Additionally, usually we don't have a lot of new stipulations created. There are recommendations that come in from CPW, and assuming that CPW has revised their recommendations, our stipulations stay the same. But on this track list, we do have one new stipulation that was created, and it's the elk migration corridor stipulation. So migration corridors have recently been mapped as part of the Senate Bill 19-181 wildlife rules at ECMC. So since CPW now has this data, they're recommending them as part of the recommendations. So this was the first time that elk migration corridor information had been provided to us by CPW. So we've crafted a stipulation. It's very similar to other wildlife corridors we have seen, say for the mule deer. But otherwise, the stipulations addressing staff and CPW concerns related to plants and wildlife reflect the current recommendations CPW provides regarding protections. And they've been reviewed by the board in the past, but I'm happy to take any questions that might be from those STIPs that were in your exhibit 2 on the cover sheet. So staff is recommending that the board approve the standard list for auction and lease. It's 43 tracks covering 24,988.77 acres, including the stipulations to exhibit 2 on the cover sheet. And I'd be happy to take any questions. And I provided a copy of the board order that was in your packet. Yeah, be happy to chat.
Commissioners? Harvey, Mr. Preble, any questions on this particular standard track list?
I had a question as a new board member. I guess we're going to vote on 6 action items, and 5 of them I know pretty much how I think I know how I'll vote. One of them I still have questions, and I don't think that can be answered right now. You know, I need to educate myself. Is it okay to abstain? Sorry?
This is, sorry, this is Ed Hammer, Assistant Attorney General. I was practicing standing, not sitting for a moment.
Yeah.
Yes, you are welcome. You are free to abstain.
Okay, great.
Thank you for the question. All right, let's see, Alec, if you're still there, see if the public has any comments on the auction list.
Absolutely. Great. If any of our attendees joining us online have any comments they'd like to make on this particular agenda item, please use the raise hand function on Zoom and we will move you over so you're able to address the board. Not seeing any hands raised.
Okay. All right, then regarding this final action item, may I have a motion to approve the board order as produced by the staff? Yes,
Madam Chair, I move that the board adopt oil, gas, and helium lease auction August 2025 standard track list as contained in our board packet.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you very much, Mr. Poole. All right, let's have a vote. Commissioner Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Pribble?
Yes.
Commissioner Harvey?
Abstain?
And the chair votes yes. 4 yeses and 1 abstention. Thank you, Katie, for your comprehensive report.
Thank you.
All right, we welcome Crystal.
Oh, is it Crystal?
Now. I wonder, maybe this is out of order, but, we, as the public knows, we had a information item or a discussion in executive session with this particular issue. I'm wondering, commissioners, do you feel like you need a lot more presentation on this, or?
I don't have a. So. Maybe that. I am just here to, Crystal Cranda, Minerals Director. I would like to ask for authorization for staff to proceed with the settlement, as discussed in executive session.
Any questions? Are there any questions from the public or comments on this item?
Folks joining online, if you'd like to make a public comment on this particular agenda item, please use the raise hand function.
And to clarify, staff, you need to return the, maybe to continue.
So in that case, then why don't we have a motion, as presented in our board packet on negotiations?
I will move that, for this item, that we support, the, motion as presented in our board packet and is presented in executive session to the commissioners to proceed with the negotiation.
Thank you very much. May I have a second? Second. All right, let's have a vote. Commissioner Span?
Yes.
Commissioner Mead?
Yes.
Commissioner Pribble?
Yes.
Commissioner Harvey?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. It's 5-0. Thank you, Crystal. Right, now Mindy.
Just give me a second.
Okay.
You'll click on, hold on a second. Stop with the mouse. Just
Was that your,
if
is that,
you-
oh, okay, now I'm in control. This is a,
Is this in our packet or not? This-
not the PowerPoint slide,
No.
but the,
What item?
Back.
Just the
It's 3C.
F8.
So you click on the screen with the mouse. Then you use the keyboard to advance the mouse.
okay,
F8. Okay.
just with enter. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Mickey Gotsagian, the Conservation Services Manager for the State Land Board, and I'm here today to present action item for you to consider. This involves the approval or the consideration of board action on a carbon project developer that we would like the board to approve as qualified. This involves Agri-Capture Incorporated, and this would be the third carbon project developer that the staff is bringing before the board. You may recall that the board approved 2 in April. I also wanted to say that there are staff from Agri-Capture are registered and qualified as speakers on the Zoom meeting if there are questions that the board has for them. And that would be at the end of the presentation. They're not planning to make a separate presentation. Oops.
You can use the left arrow to go back slides.
Okay. This agenda item is about expanding carbon revenue options and stewardship goals involving the biological carbon program.
Right arrow.
Okay. The leasing programs offered by the staff
are like involved with the state land board are both agriculture and grazing and ecosystem services. So AgriCapture is a carbon project developer. This is going to be different than the last two that the board approved in April. I'm going to be explaining why and spending some time on that. First, I wanted to tell you though, their application or the use of this particular carbon sequestration protocol is available statewide on all the state lands. That said, there is a kind of a tier process to this. There are certain counties, and those are the ones that are marked in kind of that yellow color. Those are automatically eligible for participation in the AgriCapture protocol, which involves avoided conversion of native rangeland. The other ones that are just shown in gray, we would have to apply on an individual basis for each property and see whether they would qualify. That's because this protocol is really targeted at avoiding the conversion of topsoil and grassland. And so in the counties where you have the yellow color, you tend to have a lot of problems. In these other counties, you don't. So that's why they're not kind of pre-qualified for participation. Okay, this diagram, many of you have seen before, but our two new commissioners may have done, well, probably wouldn't have. This very simplified diagram shows the carbon market actors and the structure. The state land board is located on the right. And the revenue that we generate goes to the public schools for the most part. We have an existing lease like a lease agreement with our agricultural lessees. And then the carbon market actors are located on the left part of the diagram. We have carbon project developers. They aggregate many types of similar to these kind of projects on a regional basis. They aggregate the number of carbon credits and then they can sell those in bulk through the carbon market. Those are registered on what's called a carbon registry. And then there are buyers that want to buy those credits. The carbon market is a voluntary market. So it's going to be different from the banks that we visited yesterday in terms of wetland credits, that is regulated by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the Species Conservation Bank that's regulated through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. This is a voluntary market, and the buyers can be worldwide, not just within the local area. In the two carbon project developers, so we're focusing on the actor that's up in the yellow box. And normally in the two carbon project developers we approved in April, we'd be working with our ag lessees to generate that carbon the soil carbon that would be sequestered through their agriculture practices. We have that agreement directly with the carbon project developer through that master services agreement. In this situation, however, we are not going to be working with the agricultural lessee. We'll be having an agreement directly with the carbon project developer. I'll be talking about why. So this is going to be a different type of carbon project developer. We would work directly with them. That gives us some benefits. There's also some limitations. I'll spend some time on that.
Excuse me. What's PES mean on the previous slide?
Great question. That stands for Payment for Ecosystem Services Rider. So that previous slide, I can get this to go back.
Payment for
System services. That's an industry term. So we're paying, there's a contract that has to do with how those ecosystem services are created, monetized, and sold. In addition to the ag lease, if we do work with an agricultural lessee, this is a voluntary program, we would add a rider to the ag lease. It wouldn't replace the ag lease, it would just be a rider. Okay. Any other questions? I know this is a little bit of a difficult diagram, but for those seeing it for the first time, you may have additional questions. Okay, so identifying those carbon project developers that we want to work with. The board has been working with a partner called Millpond Incorporated for the last about a year and a half. They're helping us identify these carbon project developers, which may be working around the world. And this market being new, we were seeking for help on how to navigate and how to establish our program. The presentation I made to you in April of 2025, a few months ago, kind of showed you the framework that we're working with. And so what they're in terms of helping us pick those carbon project developers that are the best fit for the land board and our lessees. We engage with Millpond Incorporated to screen the interested carbon project developers, evaluate and score them against 9 criteria, and I'll list those briefly next. The carbon project developers submit their general form contracts, their templates for our review, our attorney's review. Is this progressing? Oh, here we go. And they're invited to review and comment on our master services agreement. The state land board on our side, we interview those carbon project developers with just those with scores that are above 80 on the Millpond scoring rubric. They also have to meet our recommended state land board criteria, and I'll show you those in a moment. And waiting for this next juicy tidbit. I don't know why these are. Oh, here we go. And then we recommend those few that to the board for approval. I will let you know that in the time since April, we reviewed 2 others, and we're not quite comfortable recommending them yet. But we felt comfortable with AgriCapture. Okay. So our goal again is to select those that are qualified carbon project developers and those that are the best for the state land board lessees. And this is the listing of the 9 evaluation criteria. Again, some of the board members have seen this before, but I wanted to review these for our new members. We want to make sure they are verified and have a trustworthy background, have financial stability. Some of these are in context too, because this is a very new market, so they're not going to have decades of experience. That said, knowing which ones to work with, even coming into this new market, is very important. We want to make sure they have the necessary technical expertise, the necessary experience. They're innovative. They show adaptation and flexibility in this market as it begins to evolve. Have cost effectiveness and barrier reduction, enabling more participants to come in. And especially they have carbon credit following. We want those credits to have rigor, represent additionality, causality, durability, and safeguards. These are all important terms in the carbon industry and mitigation markets. We want some of them are also offer co-benefits beyond carbon, like environmental and social benefits. We've been careful just to really narrow our agreement right now just on carbon credits, so that if there are additional co-benefits that can be monetized in the future, we'll still hold and control those. And then finally, we want them to be transparent and be registered on open market registries, so that there's no confusion and no double dipping on different projects. So AgriCapture, again, is the 3rd one that staff is bringing to you for approval as a qualified project developer. They're going to provide a new option for biological carbon revenue. And they're, again, using avoided conversion of grasslands and shrublands to crop production. It's a protocol recognized by some of the leading carbon registries. Specifically, the carbon protocol is called ACOGS. Again, it's just a abbreviation of that long name above, version 2. And it's used by the American Carbon Registry and actually one other as well. So avoided conversion. This is quite different from the lessees that are working very hard to change their practices, record the changes to actually create additional soil carbon. This is preservation-based versus practice-based. It involves generally intact grasslands, those that haven't been converted yet. It restricts tillage or surface development and protects the existing soil carbon already in the soil. Some have stated that this can give you much higher credit yield, and it's much simpler to implement. It monetizes the existing soil carbon. I've been told that it can yield as much as 3 times more carbon credits as the practice-based projects. Requires no change in management practices. Again, we just have to make sure that the land isn't tilled. And finally, provides revenue directly to the state land. You may remember that on the other 2 projects where there's significant management investment and time provided through the agricultural producers, we share that revenue with them. In this case, the state land board would get 100% of that revenue. It's compatible with ongoing agricultural use. The existing operations can continue uninterrupted. It's a good fit for lessees that are not wanting to make operational changes. They're still going to need to meet basic stewardship standards, all the standards that are in the standard ag lease, but they don't have to do anything differently beyond that. And it can be layered with other ag, rec, and some other leases as well. Finally, well, not finally, but it engages, like, it allows the state land board to directly engage with the carbon project developers and generate revenue. Again, the carbon revenue is tied to land production and not operational changes. The revenues are earned directly by the state land board in exchange for long-term protection. And then finally, this is the biggest issue here. It's the 40-year land protection commitment. There is termination flexibility, but you may remember that the carbon project developers we've worked with so far, it's a 30-year commitment. So this is an additional 10 years. Again, it's hard to look even out 30 years sometimes. This is going to require us to look at an additional 10. However, there is termination flexibility. There is an off-ramp for this in the event 20 years down the road, there's this very significant opportunity that we can't foresee right now. And so the carbon credits that have been generated and sold can be replaced in two ways. We could, new land could be enrolled, new additional state trust lands could be enrolled to offset the loss of any land that might be developed or tilled, and they can also be bought out. Those credits can be repaid. Now, our state laws and our contracting laws don't generally allow the state land board to commit to future repayment. So we don't know which of these two things would happen, or whether we would even pass on the cost of that conversion to the new ag lessee, to the new lessee that wanted to develop them. But it does provide the 40-year restricted easement. It's a restricted term easement or agreement. Does give durability to the credits, and that gives credit integrity. So they're credits with quality, and also the off-ramp provides for future use adaptability. Any questions about this point in particular? This is really what I mean, because of the direct contract between the land board and the carbon project developer. That's fundamentally different than the other two, which works through the agricultural lessee, and then this 40-year term length is important. Any questions about that?
Just for a point of clarification, so for today, the action we're speaking about is to approve this particular carbon project developer who has this type of project. No one's being asked to approve a specific project which would be waiving its own context at that time.
Right.
And I would just say from my perspective, having worked with TNC, that these aren't as sexy. They don't provide the in-setting opportunities for companies that the practice-based credits provide that helps companies meet the science-based targets and the rest of the scope 3 emissions. Having said that, these credits are really deemed less risky. I mean, you're not having to do anything. You're just protecting what we know has been, carbon stored in the soil. So from my perspective, one, this is a good complement of the portfolio, and two, that these types of credits offer some less risk, if you will, than some of the other practice credits that we're looking at.
Oh, and Commissioner.
I'm sorry.
Mindy, you mentioned that 100% of the profits are paid directly to us. So how does agriculture capture any revenue fees?
Well, in this case, the agricultural producer doesn't capture any revenue from that. What they may have, or what they would have, is long-term stability of knowing that that particular state trust land is going to be there for 40 years and going to stay in agricultural use. Whether they're successful getting those repeated leases or not is another issue, but they know that that land is going to stay in agricultural use.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
just one second, I think what Commissioner Heath was asking was, if we're getting 100% of it, what's left of the developer? I think it's 100% of the net.
Oh, correct, yes, 100% of the
After all their costs and their
Correct.
costs, then they get the rest, but we want to split the excess.
Right, right.
Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you. It's I oversimplified, basically. The carbon capture depends upon not disturbing the soil,
Correct.
correct? Or tilling the soil. So therefore, the ag leasing is only really one use, grazing, right? Grazing is still permissible.
Yeah, this would not be, so this is not applicable to land that's already been tilled.
It's only undisturbed and not been tilled for what period of time?
I'm not sure, but it has to be attached grasslands, so it's possible they could have, it wouldn't have to be native prairie that would be disturbed, it could be CRP land or something. That has been reestablished as grassland.
And
I have no understanding of this, but there can't be that much, quote, native untilled prairie remaining
On the contrary, we have
Yeah, we have lots of.
thousands, tens and hundreds of thousands of.
that has never been tilled. You
There's
go
not
back
water,
100
it's not conducive to crops.
Yeah, it's not in areas that are conducive to a drug problem.
but still useful for grazing.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
and
Hi, folks. Sorry to
Mindy,
interrupt.
oh, no, go
Sorry.
ahead.
Tyler Hull has his hand up in the attendees list. Mindy, is he?
He is one of, he is with AgriCapture. I'm assuming, Tyler, you haven't answered. Do you want to have that answer or do you want, okay.
Please, go ahead.
I'm promoting him as panelist. Tyler, you should be able to address the board here in a second. There it goes. Okay. Tyler, if you can unmute yourself and turn your camera on, you're able to address the board.
I'm Tyler Hull. I'm the CEO of AgriCapture. I thought for the Q&A, it might be helpful if I joined and answered any questions directly. So I think one of the questions, maybe I'll just provide a quick high level. So to Mindy's point, and Mindy, thank you for all the great work on this. The distinction here is that we're looking at grasslands and rangelands that have had at least a 10-year period of no tillage. And the reason for that is we want grasslands, and the protocol stipulates that there must be at least 10 years of historical soil carbon sequestration. So we want carbon dense soils. And then second is that there has to be a threat of conversion. So this cannot apply to lands that already are in CRP or have some other mitigation against risk of conversion. We're not creating conservation value unless we're identifying lands that have no encumbrance or legal prohibition to conversion to development or cropland. The reason for higher credit yield, as you might imagine, soil carbon accrues slowly over time. So implementing new practices to increase carbon sequestration, such as rotational grazing, A, can be costly, but B, takes time to build up that soil carbon and just the natural biological process. When we work with grasslands that have had many decades in grassland that have already accrued significant amounts of soil carbon, the ability for that carbon to be depleted quickly through tillage is significant. So instead of building up slowly over time, we're mitigating a fall off in the soil carbon that's in the soil through tillage. And in doing so, we identify these dense carbon-rich soils, avoid conversion, and that prevents a release of CO2 back into the atmosphere, which effectively causes higher credit generation year over year for avoiding that significant loss. So those are the initial clarifiers I wanted to provide, but happy to just sit on for the rest of this portion and address other questions.
Do you do baseline measurements of carbon units per acre or whatever the unit is, and then do you do it periodically?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. So the methodology does not require direct soil sampling, so that allows us to bring down our costs. What it looks like is soil suitability class, historical rainfall, models expected carbon value, and then the counterfactual loss of carbon through conversion to agricultural production. And so in doing so, we don't have to do direct soil sampling, which allows us to be more scalable, less costly, and have, an approved methodology through that quantification approach.
And if you had a really bad lessee on a, grazing permit, would you notice, or would we be discounted for, not denuding the land, but just not doing such a good job grazing?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. So the protocol requires grazing management information to ensure that there's not any overgrazing. If there's overgrazing that's going to degrade the soil carbon, that would constitute a reversal. So while we are only really preventing tillage, we do have to monitor grazing practices to ensure that there's not overgrazing that would degrade soil carbon content.
Thank
And
you.
Commissioner Harvey, that's a good question because I was thinking of that also, but again, as we've heard throughout the presentation, the stewardship requirements that are associated with any of our leases, but specifically our ag leases, that, to the extent of monitoring them, we have a good lessee in the track record, but that will help protect us from having reversals
Right.
because we require them and monitor for that. Nicole?
Right.
And go ahead.
Sorry, Tyler, did you have another thought?
I was just going to share. So the concept around termination. So essentially, we would be compensating the Colorado State Land Board for the opportunity cost of other land use types, specifically something that would involve tillage. And so that annual payment to you is for that 40-year opportunity cost. And then to Mindy's point around termination flexibility, I understand that 40 years is a long time horizon. That's a requirement of the protocol. So that is a firm time horizon. That being said, if in year 10, there was an alternative use case, we have kind of a responsible termination clause that says, okay, we've been issuing this property 10 years of credits on a 40-year commitment. That 40-year commitment is not going to be maintained. And essentially those 10 years of credits have now gone into default. And then we can price out a termination clause based on purchasing and backfilling those 10 years of credits that have now been defaulted by not fulfilling that full 40-year obligation. And in doing so, we've upheld the rigor of the project and the carbon credits, but still allowed flexibility by having a one-for-one replacement for that defaulted credit, if you will.
Tyler, that's a question for you. Do you anticipate that these carbon credits will be more marketable because they have full benefits, including our wildlife conservation, as well as that the revenue will flow to support public schools?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a couple of impacts in carbon markets. It should be noted, like, we are focused on emission reductions. So in this case, we're reducing the emissions that would occur from tillage and release of soil carbon. You'll commonly hear that carbon removals, so practices that are going to increase carbon in the soil instead of avoid the release of carbon in the soil, are at a premium. And I think that historically has been true, but has not been AgriCapture's direct experience. We have generated over 70,000 emission reduction credits and have sold them to date over 2 times the average price of agri-based carbon removals. And the reason for that is because these are really high quality credits in the sense that there is no risk of reversal, meaning if you did a rotational grazing project, sequestered carbon, but something happened to that land or there was insufficient rain, there could be a reversal. We don't have that reversal because we're not storing, we don't have a practice that could be undone, if you will. That's one piece of it. And then 2, there's like tremendous water co-benefits. And then certainly just the use case of these credits, funding the programs and institutions that you fund, are a big part of the compelling marketing. And that's, a big part of pricing in the carbon market.
What makes certain lands not appropriate for carbon sinks versus the ones you like?
Yeah,
I mean, there's some
so
obvious stuff, but you know, in general, if you looked out on or millions of acres of the state land, how would you identify that?
yeah, I mean, it's your gut is probably right. So one is if it has heavy rainfall and hasn't been disturbed and has grasses and vegetation, it's likely built up carbon over time. Number two is that it has to have threat of conversion, both legally and financially, meaning
Okay.
there's no legal restriction from that land to be developed into another use case. So there's a myriad of things that could prevent that. CRP, if it was in a conservation easement, if it was already held by an entity that's already, a state park or something like that, is not under threat of conversion. And then the third would be financial threat of conversion, meaning it's in a part of the country, it is in a county, it's a flat, it's not an undulated, mountainous area, and it has threat of conversion to be leased for cropland production. So we look at those different criteria to determine what the eligible acreage is, and then also model forward, okay, if this field became a cornfield or something, for example, what would the loss of soil carbon be? And all of those factors quantify the credit issuance over that 40-year time horizon.
Okay, thanks.
And on that note, what I'd like to do is just go through my last two slides, and then we can pause for some additional comments. One is that, as Commissioner Froh pointed out, we're asking you today just to consider the approval of this carbon project development. However, we're not also asking you to apply this to any particular property, and that we're aware that because of this long-term conversion, it's really the property participation that will be an issue for the board consideration. So again, proximity to development, pressure and opportunity. I will say that that's the very threat of conversion that drives the value for this, but the board will have to make that decision of whether each property on a property by property basis would be suitable for this particular tool. Potential for high revenue yield from state landlord, from other landlord kind of the lines of business. And then finally, the soil carbon revenue potential. So those are going to be the more difficult issues. I will just pause here with, what AgriCapture's score was with Mill Pond's evaluation rubric was 92, quite high. They've met all the other criteria that we've asked. They provided copies of the contracts forms for review. They're registered in good standing with the state of Colorado. Are agreeing to work with our master services agreements. I will say that the traditional agreements that we've talked about so far, the master services agreement and the payment for ecosystem services rider, because we're working directly with AgriCapture, in this case, it would be kind of an expanded kind of ecosystem services lease, not that dissimilar from what we've done for Limit 5. They have not worked with the state land board to date, but they have experience working with other leased lands, experience working in the Western United States or other agricultural producers, and have not yet had experience working with government lands. But with that, ready, to make staff recommendation or entertain other questions as well.
Well, I think of this as very akin to a private market funded CRP program, right? The difference being corporations are purchasing the carbon credits to pay the landowner to conserve grasslands and rangelands. And, maybe the distinction there is that the rate of payment can appreciate over time as carbon prices increase or fluctuate. We're bullish obviously on carbon because that's the nature of our business, but I think of it very similar to a private market funded CRP, if that's a helpful analogy.
But without restrictions on grazing, for example. Yeah.
Correct.
Are there any other questions? The board or... The staff recommends that the board approve AgriCapture Incorporated as a qualified project developer under the state landlord's biological carbon program. And this next slide has the text that is in your board package for the board order.
And
Quite a lot.
I'd like to see if there's any public comment out there on this particular item.
If any of our attendees have any public comments they'd like to make on this particular agenda item, please use the raise hand function in Zoom and we'll get you moved over. Commissioner Frobe, I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Great, thank you, Al. All right, may I have a motion on this matter?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the motion that's contained in our packet, which I cannot find.
But you can read.
Right.
Oh.
Authorize staff work with AgriCapture on the ecosystem review. That's sufficient.
I think so.
Don't you have to read it?
Well,
You want me to read it in full?
Well, we'll
no,
let
I
her
just
go.
want to make. Just because we've got new commissioners, the key element with the board orders is that there's clarity for staff to know what it's directed to do. Typically, staff has prepared a draft board order, which is generally presented on the screen during presentations and is contained in the board packet. And I am perfectly comfortable when the commissioners are clear that they are moving the draft board order that's contained in the board packet or presented on the screen as their motion. And I think that provides plenty.
Madam Chair, on the advice of our esteemed counsel, I wish to withdraw the previous motion and offer a new motion that satisfies the suggestion of counsel. So I move to draft or to approve. I move that the board approve the board order as contained in the packet, shown on the screen, recommending that it's in the best interest of trust to approve AgriCapture Incorporated as a state land board qualified project developer authorized to work with SLB on state trust lands.
Perfect.
All right.
We have a motion. We have a second. Second. We have a second. Thank you. Have a vote. Commissioner Tribble.
Yes.
Commissioner Harvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Heath? Yes. And the chair votes yes. You? Thank you, Mindy. And you're up again.
Commissioners?
At bat for 1-1.
I'll be happy to load it for you.
Please, okay. I'm just trying to get to the end of it.
Off now. Thank you for your time and look forward to meeting most of you at the conference in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm quite there yet. Just give me another second, please. So you'll need
You're saying
to
support.
use the mouse to click on the screen. And then you should be good to go. Give it a try.
Trying to find the cursor. Is that mine up there? Okay. All right. Again, commissioners, I'm Mindy Gottsagen, Conservation Services Manager with the State Land Board. I'm here to present the agenda item, Investment and Development Fund request, the Carbon and Biodiversity Program development working with Millpont and Enview companies. This is an action item, and again, as the Tyler Hall, we have representatives from both Millpont and Enview attending and available to answer questions at the end. In the right arrow. Clicking on screen and I'm hitting the right arrow. Oh, here we go. Yeah. This request is about program development and expansion into new markets. So we've talked so far about the voluntary carbon market. I also want to start looking at more depth in, with the biodiversity market. That's another voluntary market. It's not as quite as mature as even the carbon market is. I will say that England is probably leading the world in that. You may know that England now has a biodiversity regulatory program. But that said, there's quite a lot of interest here in the United States as well. We're also coming to the end of our first contract with Mill Pond. We're in the final cast of that. And we feel that continued engagement with them into this new venture would be equally important as it has been over the last year. So, statewide application, statewide potential. Nick, I can't see the bottom bars. Can you move that
So
panel back up?
Yeah, but you're gonna lose control of the stuff.
You click back on the screen.
You probably will need to do that.
Okay, so in addition to statewide impact with potential involvement of all of our state trust lands, this proposal, this IND fund request also includes a pilot project involving up to 4 properties. The first 2 properties have been identified by staff. One of them we visited last month at the Box Elder Creek project, and the second one would be up on a state landlord property that's leased by CPW as a state wildlife area. The leasing programs engaged in this would be involved the ecosystem services program and the biodiversity, agricultural grazing, and through the use of regenerative grazing, and then finally agricultural and cropland as well. I will say that even possibly some old oil and gas sites could be engaged in those sites that are abandoned and rehabilitated to capture that enhancement of biodiversity. Again, this is this other diagram showing the project developer, state land board, and the carbon markets. This project is really going to focus on how do we engage with the market registries and how do we engage with attracting buyers that want to look at state trust lands that are actively a part of this project. The biological carbon program status. I've listed these. I can't really see all of them, but I think this slide, this information is in the board packet as well. We've kind of completed this area outlined in black, where we've developed a carbon project the carbon program documents. The board has approved the program structure and initial lessee involvement. We're now moving into, we're almost complete with completing the master services agreement. We're probably about 98% there, just in the final last tweaks of those agreements and working with Chico Basin Ranch as the first lessee participating. And then finally, this new phase will bring us really into program expansion. We have yet to actually announce this to the majority of our lessees, announce it to other kind of the carbon market world. This is something we want to begin to do, to develop our website, begin to plan lessee information meetings, plan for promoting this at our ad forums. All of this will be part of this program expansion. This first slide shows the budget of the entire IND fund request. It's split between the Mill Pond component and then the NView project, the pilot project. They actually did submit a larger proposal involving record keeping on a lot of grazing management leases on up to 5 or 6 properties. We decided to delay that and then really focus on this pilot project on biodiversity. And I want to just go back to the Mill Pond proposal with the different components. The largest component of that is really the $60,000. That's our staff reaching out to engage with Mill Pond on an hourly basis. So I don't know if we'll spend that much, but their assistance has really been invaluable on launching this program. Are there any questions about these different components? I didn't spend much time on them, but it's all in the board packet. And then the second slide really is just a kind of a focusing in on the biodiversity project. Again, NView, we've identified these 2 sites and visited them. We haven't yet selected the other 2. I'd like for them to be in different parts of the state, one in the northwest, possibly one in the southeast. If we only go with two, the price would be about half of that. The interesting thing about this pilot is that it involves the use of the herbicide Rejuva. This is something that's been around probably 8 years or more. It had phenomenal success. Boulder County has tested it widely. CPW is already using it along the South Platte and had phenomenal results. They had actually, in addition, I had called them about possibly because it's leased to the state as a state wildlife area. I reached out to them and said, would you mind doing this? And they're like, oh, you beat me to the phone. We were going to call you to ask you if we could do it on this property as part of your broader project, like along the South Platte. So that's what these funds would go for. And then finally, this is a photograph of that Box Elder North property. You can just see how heavily infested it is with cheatgrass. Interestingly enough, you have to make sure that there's enough native grasses underneath this so that we don't want to spray it, have nothing there at all. And so as bad as this property is, it can't be too bad. And so it has to be kind of pre-qualified for this project. And then finally, this is the Bravo. Some people call it Bravo, but the South State Wildlife Area, this would be the second pilot site. And this is the one that's about 20 miles away from this Tamarack State Wildlife Area that CPW is already. Any questions about these two? What will happen is the Rejuva herbicide basically controls cheatgrass for about 5 years. And actually, they're seeing that it actually extends beyond 5 years somewhat. And these pilot projects will all be about 100 acres in size. It's an expensive herbicide. It can be, I think, up to $15 per acre. They can control very closely where that's applied, keep it out of waterways and so forth. But it appears that these properties are both really great pilot sites. And then that ends with the staff recommendation that the board determines that it's in the best interest of the trust to move forward and approve the proposed entity fund request for $143,800 to hire Mill Pond Incorporated and MU for continued technical advisory services and support the development of our carbon program and implementation of the biodiversity pilot project on state trust lands. And IND Fund has sufficient capacity to support this request. The details of the fund are provided in exhibits.
Mindy, I have one
Mindy,
question.
are there competing grasses that are planted after you spray the Rejuva on the cheatgrass?
No,
Or
there's
like seeding?
no, there's no supplemental seeding done over top of Rejuva. What happens is that the native seeds that are in the seed bank are able to germinate
I see.
and grow.
Okay, thank you.
And again, a reminder to the board that there are staff of both of these companies available for
I just had a quick question on the
Sure.
Rejuva. You said it's been used for about 8 years, and I'm assuming that there haven't been any harmful, consequences.
Right.
Implications.
Yeah. And what the initial assessment was that it would be good for controlling it for 5 years, and that these native grasses would once again get a foothold there.
Yeah.
What they're finding is that the effects of that are continuing on, that it's continuing to suppress the cheatgrass.
We passed the Boulder test. I thought we were.
Oh, okay.
It seems like it, yes. Any other questions from commissioners? Seeing none, we'll move to the public, Alec.
Excellent. Any members of the public that are joining us as attendees online that would like to make a public comment on this agenda item, please use the raise hand function on Zoom. We'll get you moved over. We have one hand raised from Dominic Sutton. I will promote you to panelist. And in a second, you should be able to unmute yourself, turn your camera on, and address the board.
Hello, just wanted to say thank you and commissioners for the opportunity to continue supporting the amazing leadership you guys are taking in environmental markets and bringing these opportunities to ranchers and working lands. And I really feel it's Millpont's role is this is kind of what we started our company to do, and it's a privilege to be working with y'all. So just saying thank you. Mindy is and staff has been a absolute their expertise and processes y'all have put in to place, and the approach you take to managing stewardship, but also the fiduciary responsibility is really exciting to see, and I think something I think others will emulate as you continue to make a mark in this in the way that working lands are managed for for revenue, but also sustainability.
Thank you so much for that. And for the record, would you mind stating your name and then again, the organization?
Yeah, sorry. Dominic Sutton-Vermeulen, CEO here at Millpont.
We thank you very much for your services and helping support our emerging environmental programs. All right, then, may we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that the board approve the request for $143,800 to hire Millpont LLC and Enview for continued technical advisement and support for development of the biological carbon program and implementation of a biodiversity pilot. Is that enough?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner.
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Pribble. All righty now, we're rolling. Commissioner, how do we vote? Commissioner Scanlon? Aye. Mr. Heath? Aye. Mr. Pribble?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
And the chair votes yes. There's 5-0. Thank you, Mindy.
Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Thanks.
Thank you. Oh. Oh.
You don't need me to get this.
Okay. Now, on the solar garden, and I believe Mr. Rodenberg's joining us by Zoom. Where he was.
He's there.
Is he? Okay.
You guys hear me okay?
Yep, you're up.
Great. Good afternoon, Commissioners. David Rodenberg, Renewable Energy Program Manager for the State Land Board. I also wanted to welcome Commissioner Harvey and Commissioner Pribble. I look forward to meeting you both in person sometime soon. And for the sake of the new commissioners, I also wanted to let you know that I currently manage the right-of-way program as well as the tower site leasing program, cell tower site leasing program. This final action item is a recommendation from staff asking the board to approve a solar garden production lease with Clay Creek Energy LLC. Clay Creek Energy is a subsidiary and project company of Sandhills Energy LLC. This item is coming to the board for decision because all renewable energy production leases require board approval. However, typically staff has sought board approval for solar gardens via the board leasing agenda due to their small size and lack of opposition. A solar garden, as defined by the Community Solar Garden Act, is a project that is less than 5 megawatts, but under certain circumstances can be as large as 10 megawatts. Any project over 10 megawatts is essentially considered large scale. Staff decided to bring this particular solar production lease to the board as a separate agenda item as an opportunity to go through our renewable energy leasing process now rather than for a later opportunity. Staff intends to continue bringing solar garden production leases to the board on the board leasing agenda going forward unless the board indicates otherwise. So this particular solar garden production lease, if approved by the board, will not only meet the State Land Board's renewable energy goals, but it will also earn the state school trust $795,000 over the 26-year term of the lease, 1 year for construction and 25 years for the production lease term. This project is part of the Renewable Energy Program, of which I manage. The Renewable Energy Program only includes wind and solar. Other renewable energy resources are managed by other team members. This project is located here in the northwestern part of Prowers County. The project site, which you will see in a later slide, is less than 3 miles southeast of the city of Lamar. So the State Land Board has a 3-part process when it comes to renewable energy leasing on state trust land. The first part, prior to issuing a lease, is the pre-application review, where staff goes through a detailed review of the request to determine whether the project meets the policy and is in the best interest of this trust. Each program manager reviews the proposed project and related state trust lands and how it may affect their particular program. This review also includes the district manager, the stewardship trust manager, and the conservation services manager. The second part is the planning lease, which allows the developer to demonstrate a certain amount of land control to be able to plan and start to develop the project, which includes site planning, obtaining environmental studies, obtaining a power purchase agreement, obtaining the necessary local government approvals. Planning leases are generally issued by staff per the board's delegated authority. However, prior to issuing a planning lease, if an agricultural lessee objects to the lease and requests to speak to the board, staff will bring the planning lease to the board for review and decision. This gives the agricultural lessee the opportunity to speak to the board. Since solar gardens are comparatively smaller in acreage to other renewable energy leases, they're typically anywhere between 20 and 50 acres in size, and allows the grazing lessee to continue to graze the remainder of the parcel. Staff typically does not receive any significant concerns from our agricultural lessees. If a project does materialize and go to a production lease, the agricultural grazing lessee's AUMs are adjusted to reflect that reduction. The State Land Board entered into a planning lease with Clay Creek Energy in June of 2024. So keep in mind that by executing the planning lease, staff is stating that the project meets our policy and goals and that we support the project in regard to what is in the best interest of the trust beneficiaries. And finally, the third part is the production lease, which provides the project developer with the right to construct and operate a renewable energy project on state trust land. All renewable energy production leases require board approval, where the board is essentially approving the terms of the lease that staff has negotiated. This project has gone through the first 2 steps, the pre-application review and the issuance of the planning lease, which is why we are here today to present this solar garden project and the negotiated terms to seek board approval of a production lease. If the board approves this production lease, project construction is expected to start in the fall of this year, and the commercial operation to start in late spring, early summer of 2026. So Sandhills Energy has 13 years of experience developing projects. Their portfolio consists of 1.2 gigawatts of solar and wind that are in the final development stages and beyond. They also have 4.6 gigawatts of projects that are under various stages of early development. And lastly, their Colorado portfolio includes similarly sized projects, 0.3 to 20 megawatts, in Delta, Ray, Yuma, and Fort Morgan. Along with the proposed project near the city of Lamar, there are 2 other projects under development in Trinidad and La Junta. So as mentioned just a bit ago, the State Land Board entered into a planning lease with Clay Creek Energy in June of 2024 for 160 acres. This map shows the location of those 160 acres as it relates to section 16, as you can see here, that's this crosshatch area. One of the goals of the planning lease is to determine where the 30-acre project would reside within those 160 acres. So this map shows the specific location that was determined by Clay Creek Energy to be the ideal location for the proposed solar garden. And that's this crosshatch area you see down here. So the proposed lease terms for the project is that it will include those 30 acres I just showed you. It will have 5 megawatts of power capacity, and the lease will have a 25-year production lease term plus a 12-month construction period. And just to add some context to this, 1 megawatt of power capacity can provide power for approximately 225 homes. And according to the State Census Bureau, as of 2021, there are 2,824 households in the city of Lamar. So this 30-acre project, 5 megawatts, roughly speaking, can essentially power 40% of the homes in the city of Lamar. Clay Creek Energy's power purchase agreement is with the Arkansas River Power Authority, which serves 6 communities in southeastern Colorado, including Lamar, Holly, La Junta, Los Animas, Springfield, and Trinidad. However, all the power from this particular solar garden will be consumed locally in Lamar. So estimated revenue, the total revenue that the board will receive from this project is approximately a total of $795,000 over the course of the 26-year term. That total includes 2 main parts. The first part being one-time initial payments of $30,870. And that includes an installation fee of $7,470 and a construction period payment of $23,400. The second part is the production lease payment, which consists of $780 per acre per year, or $23,400 per year for the initial year, and then escalating 2% annually, totaling $765,000 over the 25-year production life of the lease. The revenue per acre is considerable and likely close to or higher than the actual value of the land per acre. Staff will also collect a performance bond of $150,000 that would be held for the life of the project. The life of the lease. And this bond is used for any potential payment issues and or potential defaults of the lease, and to ensure that the land is restored appropriately after the life of the project and the facilities are removed. Staff followed all agency procedures regarding lease application review and analysis. Prior to issuing a planning lease, the Renewable Energy Program Manager solicited feedback from the District Manager, Stewardship Trust Manager, the Conservation Services Manager, and all program managers. No significant issues or concerns were identified during that initial review. There were no substantial conflicts with the agricultural SE. And in addition, the City of Lamar is very supportive of the project and was very much involved with getting the project started. In fact, the City of Lamar were the first to reach out to me about this project while working with the developer to take on the project. This project does fall outside of the city limits and therefore also requires county approval as well. So the proposed project will follow all local land use and regulations, as well as federal regulations and requirements. Additionally, for use with all renewable energy leasing decisions, staff developed BMPs for renewable energy projects through consultation with industry experts and other state and federal agencies. The BMPs that are in renewable energy production leases direct a lessee to mitigate potential adverse impacts to state trust land that may occur during and after project development. BMPs also help ensure successful site restoration after initial construction activity and again at the end of the project life. So other considerations, Clay Creek Energy completed their project site design. They've completed phase 1 environmental studies. They completed a review with the State Historic Preservation Office with no finding of historic properties. They finalized a power purchase agreement with the Arkansas River Power Authority. And they will be obtaining an environmental review that will include consultation with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as well as Colorado Parks and Wildlife. In the process of, and they are in the process of obtaining all of the necessary city and county approvals as well. So the benefits from the Solar Garden project will be that the associated lease will generate significant long-term and consistent revenue for the school trust, and it supports the State Land Board's renewable energy goals as well as Colorado's long-term renewable energy goals. And with that, staff recommends that the board approve a Solar Garden production lease with Clay Creek Energy, a subsidiary of Sandhills Energy, for a solar project located on 30 acres of school trust land in the southwest quarter of Section 16, Township 23 South, Range 46 West in Prowers County. The lease will include all of the terms described in the cover sheet. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have. And we also have a representative from Sandhills Energy here to help answer any questions that you may have specifically for them.
David, I see Commissioner Harvey has a question.
Yeah, David, with these solar projects being both a good source of revenue and aligned with Colorado's goals to be carbon free eventually, does the staff, the land board staff, actively seek private companies to site these sorts of projects, or do you wait for the companies to come to you?
That's a great question. So we're based on my workload, I don't do a whole lot of reaching out to developers, but we have quite an influx of interested developers that are familiar with state trust land. So we really don't have a need at this point to go out and solicit developers. I've got a backlog of folks interested in leasing state trust land currently. So we don't go out and solicit developers for our properties at this point. And I think a lot of the major companies know who we are. And so they're reaching out to us on a continual basis.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Chair.
Yes.
Commissioner, I could add to that a little bit. Christopher Smith, Assistant Director for Energy Innovation. We're in the process of hiring another position on my team to help relieve the right-of-way workload. As David mentioned, he does renewables, rights-of-way, and tower sites. And so with that, it'll free up a lot of David's time to pursue that. We have also, this is was a newer business about 10 years ago, and we really did a huge push to streamline our process and to let the developers know that we were open for business. And the result of that, I think, is David being so busy. So.
Yes, Commissioner Brewer.
Very quickly, David, you mentioned that the project for Clay Creek is the process of getting county approval. Is there any reason to expect any pushback or difficulty with that?
I don't believe so. Cam Nielsen with Sandhills is here, and he can probably answer that question better.
Hi guys, Cam Nielsen. I'm the VP of Technology and Analytics with Sandhills Energy. To answer your question, we do not expect any pushback with the support from the city of Lamar. We don't expect the county to have any pushback there.
All right. Is there any public comment on this matter?
Folks joining us online, if you have a public comment on this specific agenda item, please use the raise hand function and we will move you over to address the board. Commissioner Froh, I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Thank you very much, Alec. All right, then, may we have a motion to this board?
Madam Chair, I move the board approve Solar Garden production lease application 9471 as contained in our that.
Thank you. We have a second. Second. Commissioner Scanlon. All right. Commissioner Fribble, how do you vote?
Yes. Aye.
Commissioner D. Aye.
Yes.
Commissioner Scanlon. Yes. Commissioner Harvey.
Aye.
And the chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
All right, Andy Doucette is somewhere.
Hi. Doucette.
Where is alone.
David, would you mind stop sharing when you have a second? I don't have a presentation, but I don't want us to get confused. Good afternoon,
That's fine.
Commissioners. Nick Massey, Deputy Director for the State Land Board. Here to present the board leasing agenda for July 2025. With some new commissioner energy on the board, I take a moment to remind us of really what this is about. The board leasing agenda are those decision items that require board approval. This item is those leasing decisions that require board approval, but don't necessarily rise to the level of an independent action maybe. Based on maybe they're just sort of, I don't know, I don't want to diminish. They're serious decisions to make, but they don't have especially unique features or problematic components to them that need to be wrestled over. So we don't generally prepare independent cover sheets for these items. It's certainly appropriate to ask questions about individual items. It is also perfectly permissible to, if there's something on that agenda that is unacceptable to the board, to extract it from an approval, if that's something you desire to do. But generally, the staff is trying to express that this is something that we hope the board can be comfortable with, given the facts of the case as presented. So in front of you, or part of your packet this month for July, we've got 4 competitive bids and 3 new leases presented. That includes a little bit of information about the type of lease that it is, where it is in the state, perhaps the lessee name, and what the total value of the lease is, meaning over the course of the life of the lease or the term of the lease, it's a number that represents the total revenue we would expect off of that lease for the trust beneficiaries. So with that, happy to entertain questions or a motion for approval on that.
I'm sorry, Nick, I do have a question.
Sure.
And again, I'm wondering how, if anyone knows anything more about applicant number 2 on the very first lease, $85 in AUM.
Yep, it's a lot.
Yeah.
The way I think I was planning to address the question, the expected question, is that the lessees that were awarded, the CAVs, had an application that was especially strong in the factors of stewardship and community stability. So we outlined that our evaluations take those 2 components as well as the financial component into account. And here's a situation where a balanced, reasonable application came in from the first one, and the second one was kind of out there.
Yeah.
Elliot, do you want to say anything particular?
Yeah, my understanding, you can see what the number of points they had are pretty low, right? And so that producer didn't have a great track record. They threw some money at it. Our process is pretty rigorous. We go through it, and the district manager and the folks doing the review made the recommendation that they like the person who isn't paying as much but has much higher value based on the criteria.
Yeah, it seemed a bit fantastical.
Yeah, we get that sometimes.
Come along.
Yeah.
And each time it comes through, it forces staff to be sure that we feel good about our process being balanced between stewardship and revenue. And yeah, I mean, the math, that pencils out a big gap, but there was perhaps a lack of comfort in what was being shown in the second application. But certainly, I want to highlight the strength of the first application.
New commissioners, do you have any questions on this? All right. How about public comment now?
Absolutely. Any folks joining us online that would like to make a public comment on this particular agenda item, please use the raise hand function. And Commissioner, as I see that there are only staff members in our attendees list, I do not think we will have any public comment on this item.
saying we're down to staff online. Staff can ask questions, but they don't need to.
Yeah, not at this point, thank you anyway. All right, well, then let's have a motion for this leasing agenda approval.
I move we approve the July board leasing agenda as presented.
Thank you. We have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Cribble. Let's have a vote. Commissioner Scanlon.
Yes.
Commissioner Heath.
Yes.
Commissioner Cribble.
Yes.
Commissioner Harvey.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Agenda passes. Thank you, Nick. And does anyone have any comments regarding the minutes from last meeting? Thankfully none. Minutes are considered passed without information. Is there any other business or any other announcements?
Nick was gonna walk us through the plan for August.
All right.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a few brief mentions about what we have ahead. No, need my reading glasses to read my own handwriting anymore. So for August, we're taking the board to Alamosa. We've asked for some extra time on that one. We'd like to travel. We'd like to encourage all travel to happen Tuesday afternoon, which is 12th, because we'd like to have a full and robust day on the 13th. To spend considerable time probably with our Lahara property that we've been wrestling with some questions about. But we want to show off that property. It's exceptional. And then we'll have our business meeting on Thursday, the 14th, with a trip back from Alamosa. And yeah, that afternoon. Just a reminder that we spoke about, we plan to have board elections in the August meeting. So be thinking about if you would like to continue in an existing capacity, or if you'd like to nominate someone in particular or whatever, that's something we'll wrestle with in August. September, we've got our tour happening on Wednesday, the 10th, with our business meeting happening on Thursday, the 11th. We'll be staying in the Springs. My understanding, I'm getting nods.
Yes.
And one of the highlights of September is Chico, spending some time out of the Chico Basin Range. Lots of activity for us to consider out there, kind of check in with how we're doing, supporting our lessees, et cetera. And we want to show off the really cool bird banding station, which is nicer than the house. So,
Well, your house is full.
it does. They're porous, but they're used in the beach. And then I wanted to point out that in October, we've asked everybody to support a date change. So we'll be having, well, I guess we're in Denver, so we want to say have a tour. I'm not planning any kind of tour or workshop at this point, but the business meeting will be on Thursday, the 16th in Denver.
Thursday, excuse me, Commissioner Cribble, weren't you interested in the Wednesday?
That works. I have a Western Colorado University board meeting preceding me, the week of the 8th, 9th, which I think dovetailed with your need.
Yeah, you know it's moving, and I thought you needed to have it on Wednesday, the 14th, not the 15th of October, so I'm double checking this.
Okay, as long as it's that.
It's Wednesday, the day is the 5th.
14th Tuesday.
Exactly. The Wednesday, so right now it's scheduled for the Thursday. You can do either, okay.
But it's only.
We'll talk about
So it's just October.
16th, which is a Thursday. I can't do it. Can you do the 15th, which is a Wednesday?
So I think, Rachel, you and I talked about that. Yes, I believe you said Wednesday the 15th. Is that?
Yeah.
I have to go back and look at our emails.
Yeah. Wednesday, so would Wednesday work for you?
I'm fine either day.
Would Wednesday work for you?
Starting the 15th, correct?
The 15th?
Yes, yes.
Commissioner Harvey, are you indifferent between Wednesday and Thursday?
I think I'm good both days.
Thank you. The 15th is better for me, but it can be both.
In August, I will not be joining, and I'm going to try to zoom in, but I don't know if I can.
So that means, yeah, if there's any executive item, we need to make sure the rest of us are all participate.
And my apologies. So we were settled on the
Okay. I can do the 15th. And the 16th.
Oh, either. Okay. But well, the 15th works for everyone. Let's make it Wednesday, which we traditionally, or do we, anyway. How about Wednesday? We do usually do it. It's the 15th. That's what I thought. Okay.
So it's just
All this one day obligation in Denver.
So
Wednesday,
we'll make sure all invites are updated. We'll talk about it again next month. But it sounds like we're pointing at the 15th of October.
Correct.
We're hitting in there.
Lovely. That's awesome. All right. Any other topic of business?
I just wanted to thank everybody.
Oh, sorry.
A wonderful and inaugural board meeting.
Yes. Welcome.
Commissioner Harvey?
I just wanted to compliment the staff of what a great job reporting and also just how prompt they've been with me and helpful in getting oriented. So Director Rosemarino and Director Massey, if you could pass that on to your staff, please.
Thank you.
Commissioner, look forward to meeting in person next month. Absolutely.
Yeah, I hope so. Yep.
All right. So the meeting is now adjourned.
Yeah.